And yeah,
It
Super
must be.
Mario Bros. Movie was fun. It wasn't didn't take any risks really, other than have Peach be independent and a strong woman, which some
Oh,
people
how
might have
groundbreaking in the
yeah.
current year.
So some people might have issue with
Now
that lately.
you know what? No, I didn't have an issue with that. What I had an issue with is the fact that they went with Chris Pratt as the voice of Mario. And I get it. He's like Mr. Hollywood right now. He's like the
Yeah.
name that everyone wants to use. But honestly, the guy who does the voice of Mario,
Game begin.
The Mystery Gaming Bros are awesome! The Mystery Gaming Bros know how to party!
Hey, Mystery Pony Fiction here, bringing you another episode of the Mystery Gaming Bros podcast. Joined this time by two guys with a face and hair, so you know what that means. Joe Rogan and Jeff Bezos are not joining me today. I'll just have to settle with Shakespearicles and Cashflow. At last, we are all here at the same time, but Cashflow will turn up a bit late. This is a podcast that is 90% about video games, but we are all members of the brony fandom, so that may come up too, on seldom occasions. So, you and me, Shakes, we watched the Game Awards together with some of our mates.
yep,
And what are your thoughts on how that turned out?
I think the 2023 Game Awards was a parody of itself. The joke's already been made, but it really is true.
It's just
it was a
one big
parody of itself.
commercial. Just one
Well,
big
no,
commercial.
well, it's always been that. Like it's part award ceremony, part 3 hour long commercial for upcoming games. That's how it's always been, and I think there's nothing wrong with that formula. But I think the theme of the Game Awards this year was, I think, as Yahtzee Croshaw put it best, "Let's all laugh at an industry that never learns anything." Tee hee hee.
All right. So, going through it looks like we need to go to the bottom of the page that I linked to start from the start of the actual event, because it looks like it's got Game of the Year at the top and the categories that they covered at the bottom. So, I
Yep.
mean, from the bottom to the top, it's in that order.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah, down at the bottom to best esports event. No one really cares about that. But what I do want to mention about that was that Nintendo, that it might have, Smash Bros. Ultimate might have been able to be an event, but apparently Nintendo crushed that because, they're douchebags. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
How,
They didn't want Super Smash Bros. To be considered an esport.
yeah, something like that. I don't really know all the details. I just remembered watching a YouTube about it. Yeah, about how, yeah, Smash Bros. Was going to have a big esports event, and Nintendo are just so, well, evil.
Well, I mean that's kind of an umbrella take on it. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about that to actually have an opinion, but I I don't like it might have been I don't want to say a political, but like a popular decision where they just decided they didn't want to be part of that scene in an official capacity, or it could have been a money decision where like they had all these other things going on, like the Valorant championships going on, and they didn't want to be trying to compete with that time slot. Or they might have something better they might have their sights on something better in 2024. Who's to say? I mean, I don't have the bird's eye view of the Nintendo corporate decision making process, but I think that the idea of them being an evil cabal probably isn't very productive from top to bottom, even if it was true.
Yeah, there's just been a lot of stuff about them being very anti-consumer and they don't seem to think of the world outside Japan very much. And I mean, I could go more into that, but I don't really have the resources on hand at the moment. But anyway, um, the next category was best esports coach, best esports team, best esports athlete. But I don't think we really have much to say about that. We just
No, not
skip through
really.
those. Yeah, I'm
I
not.
mean,
I'm not
the
someone
best
that
the
watches
best esports
esports.
game went to Valorant, and I think it's only because Counter Strike, Dota, League of Legends, and PUBG had already like won like in previous years, and to just keep giving them the gold medal every year. I think it was more of an opportunity to try to give Valorant some exposure.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of like I don't want to call it a participation award, but it's more like the other one's just being like, all right, let him have the spotlight for a year.
Yeah. I've never played Counter-Strike or Counter-Strike 2. I'm not really someone that's into those, first-person shooter sort of games. Not since way back in the N64 days. I haven't really touched those very much.
What did you play in N64? Did you play like the Turok multiplayer?
Yeah. But my favorite game was Perfect Dark.
Okay.
Started with GoldenEye, and then me and my uncle moved to Perfect Dark. And yeah, we spent a lot of time playing that. Got like thousands of hours in it. But as for best esports game for this year, I would have nominated Realm Royale. That's my favorite one. Because there's like it's sort of like Fortnite, except it's actually about running around and crafting weapons and shooting, but it doesn't have all the annoying building mechanics that I hate about Fortnite. Like what?
Well, the nice thing about Fortnite, I mean, I'm not exactly taking Fortnite's side here because I'm not a huge fan myself, but like you're not required to do any of the building aspects in Fortnite if you play multiplayer. It's like anytime I watch people play, it's always very irritating when someone's got the drop on someone else and they just drop down a whole entire building in front of them as a shield.
Yeah.
It just all it does is it just delays the gameplay. You know, it makes matches take longer. And one of the things I always liked about playing something like Warzone, for example, is that you could have a bad landing site out of your plane where a bunch of people all land around you, and you don't get a good weapon, and it just becomes a pistol battle, a pistol party, and either your team's gonna walk out of there, alive, or you're not. But either way, the match is only like 90 seconds, and you can just play again.
Yeah.
So either the match is short or you win, and then you just get right back in and playing again, which is nice, especially in the modern, in the current year when most people don't have a whole ton of time to play. A lot of the gamer crowd is getting older. They've got 9 to 5s. They don't have a ton of time to play in the evening because they've got other things to do. They've got to cook and clean and take care of house and their kids and whatnot. So if you can only hop on for 30 minutes to an hour, being able to jump into a game like that is really good.
Yeah. Fortnite does have a no build mode now. So I tried it one time and I won. So I've now got a 100% win rate in no build mode on Fortnite. So I think I'm just going to never play it again and keep that 100% win rate.
Yeah, just retire in your laurels of a perfect record. Go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Although, as a friend of ours said when we were watching the Game Awards, I was probably just playing against bots, and they probably do that just to try to draw people in and have them think they're good.
Well, yeah, because when you have a battle royale game like that where it's dependent on player traffic, like you're gonna have times of day, like especially since you're based out of Australia, there's gonna be times of day when you'd be able to play when most of the rest of the world up over is sleeping, but they still want you to be able to have that game experience of playing against a lot of other competitors, and if they have to fill in those slots with bots, then that's what they're gonna do just to keep you playing until actual players show up.
Yeah, I think they probably try to draw you in, by making you think you're good at first, by having it all be bots and like shit bots. Because in this first game that I was playing of Fortnite, I was trying to set up my key binds and everything while I was playing, and I still managed to win, even though I was constantly distracted and going into settings and stuff. So I think I was definitely playing against really terrible bots to be able to win
Well,
in that
that's
situation.
possible. That's
Yeah.
possible. I'm not. I don't know the gear workings behind the scenes for Fortnite. But I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who could explain it better. But
Yeah.
I know like one of the other things that got nominated for was the content creator of the year, and I don't care about any of these people because they're not me.
Yeah,
If I was
I
on
don't
that
know
list,
any
I
of
would have
them.
voted for me.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm not someone that watches that sort of content, so I don't know anything about that.
No. But
Um,
as far as the most anticipated games of the year, which is
so
such a
let's just
wild
list them out
category.
first. Let's just list them out first. Okay, it just bolds the one that
Oh,
won.
for the most anticipated.
Yeah, let's just list them out. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Hades 2, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Star Wars Outlaws, and Tekken 8. And we can go talk a bit about each of those games and then maybe say who the winner was at the end.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to Hades too. I've played Hades and I enjoyed it a ton.
Yeah, same
Star Wars
here.
Outlaws. Star Wars Outlaws looks really interesting. I think it has the potential to be a really good Star Wars game in the same way that Rogue One was a good Star Wars movie. And because as much as I am a huge weeb for Jedis and lightsabers, I've found that I've enjoyed the Star Wars movies that have the least amount of that. You know,
I'm
I
not
mean,
as much
I'm
of
an
a
old.
Star Wars fan. I'm more into Star Trek myself, and I don't play many Star Wars games. Probably the last Star Wars game I played was like KOTOR 2. And yeah, I pretty much just that's yeah been the only one I've played in a long time.
Yeah. So
But
I actually, when I played Knights of the Old Republic, I kind of tricked myself into doing it because I you have to understand this is almost before the internet was really a thing when that game came out. So it was just like this thing saying, "Hey, there's this game coming out," and you would find out about it from either a TV commercial or a magazine ad in like Nintendo Power or something. And and when I saw that there was a new Star Wars game coming out, I thought it was going to be like Jedi Academy or Jedi Outcast, where it was a third-person, melee game where you go around swinging a lightsaber and doing all that in real time. And it turned out it was a point-and-click adventure game um, with RPG elements. And so I started the game, and I'm like, wait, I gotta click on this thing. Then my character walks over here. I was so disappointed because it wasn't that fast-paced, frenetic, uh,
yeah,
actual real-time combat game. And I went to try to return it, and they're like, "No, you can't do software returns." And they explained because you could pirate the software and then return the disc. So I was stuck with it. So I mean, I had just spent $60 on this game because it was like launch day, and I said, "All right, well, if I'm gonna own this, I ought to play it at least." And after getting into playing it, it ended up being like my favorite Star Wars game of all time. And
oh yeah, yeah.
yeah,
For
and
me, it
I
was I enjoyed it from the beginning because I like those sort of RPGs. I was hyped from the start with
Yeah, and
you
I
know
and I do now. It's just the way I got into it. I wasn't expecting it. It caught me off guard that was going to be that kind of game style.
yeah
Um, and but comparing between the two, and I know we're getting a little off topic, but just comparing between the two, I would say that Knights of the Old Republic 2 had better gameplay in terms of like the interface and some of the extra additions to like being able to add more customization to your lightsabers and force powers and the way that you could influence your followers and whatnot. But ultimately, I'd say that Knights of the Republic 1 was a better game because it had a better story. And
yeah. It
to
had
this
one hell of a
day,
twist.
to this day, it has the best twist of
Yeah,
any entertainment media I've ever experienced. Like I've seen Planet of the Apes where he finds out, oh, it was Earth all along, or Luke finding out that Darth Vader was his father. But man, the
I don't
twist
know.
in Knights of the Old Republic 1, and I spoiler check myself because there are people who have not played that game who
Yeah,
need to play it without knowing that twist because that's the kind of thing that'll knock your socks off.
it is one of my favorite twists in a game, but I probably wouldn't say it's the best one I've witnessed. But yeah, it was definitely one hell of a shocker.
Yeah.
Yeah, but moving on. Now, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, I don't really know anything about that, but what I do know is that I absolutely loved Like a Dragon um, uh, th- Yakuza. That's it. Like a Dragon
Oh,
Yakuza. That was a brilliant, brilliant game.
yeah, I
Absolutely
hear
loved
Like a
it.
Dragon, and I'm thinking that's the Madonna song.
Right. But then apparently there's one Like a Dragon Ishin that has been re-released recently. I thought it was a new game and it was the same sort of RPG mechanics and everything. Because what it is it's a RPG game about martial art, like street martial arts fighting. And you actually walk around Tokyo. Like this is in Like a Dragon Yakuza, and
Yeah.
yeah, you walk around Tokyo and you get into street fights, street gang fights and stuff, and you level up, and it's actually turn-based, so you actually go into a menu and you know, choose to use a special move, and like the environment, you know, like the environment is where it is. You don't go into like a separate screen to when a fight happens, and it doesn't, you know, go into, yeah, it's not like a random encounter. You can see the
So
people in the street.
it's like Pokemon, except you're the Pokemon
Uh,
in terms
I,
of how the combat plays out.
yeah, I don't know if that'd be the best way to explain it. This is why I wish Cashflow was here, because he could like bring up yeah, bring up gameplay of it, and I could actually, yeah, explain it better. But yeah, oh, it's one of my favorite games of last year. And yeah, it was just such a, yeah, good surprise, and plus the story was absolutely amazing. So I don't really know much about what this Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is going to be, whether it's still connected to the Yakuza franchise or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, rounding out the list is Tekken 8, which is Tekken. Doesn't really need an explanation.
yeah,
And and I don't imagine that there's much of a surprise that didn't win for most anticipated game, because it's already a Tekken game, you know, just a different number on the end of it.
yeah.
Although Final Fantasy VII winning was odd to me, but then I realized, oh no, it's a Square Enix game, and Square Enix has one of those weird fan bases like Apple
Oh yeah,
or
like Final Fantasy VII was one of the first games I played in my life. I'm like, or at least, yeah, first PlayStation game I played. I think, yeah, it was the first like 3D ish game that I played. Before that, I just played stuff on the Sega and stuff like that, the Sega Mega Drive. And I just
yeah.
remember being really young, and I also remember not having a memory card. And so I was playing at hardcore mode, and every time I'd die in Final Fantasy VII, that was it. I'd have to start over from the beginning because I didn't have a memory card. And yeah, I have like I never got past Midgard when I played it when I was really young.
I was gonna say,
So
because you couldn't even turn your system off then if you were doing that.
yeah, exactly. So yeah,
And
so
that's bonkers, because people always say like, oh, you have to get past like the first 9 hours of the game before you can start enjoying it, which I think is a terrible gatekeeping mechanic for a game.
well, that have you played Final Fantasy VII Remake? Because
No, I played Final Fantasy back in the '90s.
yeah, but you have played seven, haven't you? From like beginning to end, or
No,
okay.
no, I got about like 2 hours into it, and I said, wow, this is boring, and then I went back to playing Doom.
Well, that sucks because Final Fantasy VII is one of those games that I think might have a better twists in it than KOTOR. Absolutely brilliant story, and yeah, just it being reimagined in this, you know, in modern gaming, starting with Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is actually the first 10 hours of the game extended to about 30 hours of gameplay. And it's all just the first part of the game where you're stuck in Midgar. Because the game starts with you being in this big city that you can't leave until certain story events force you to leave. And then you can't actually go back in. And the part where Final Fantasy VII
Oh my
Rebirth
god, you're
is going
talking
to
about
start.
Terrace. It's just Terrace.
Well, yeah, your main party are technically like they're eco-terrorists. That's what the storyline is.
No, I meant Terrace from KOTOR 1. The city of Terrace. On the planet of Terrace, you know, with
I'm not sure if I remember
Did
much.
you don't remember playing the first? All right. Well, anyways, yeah, you start in the city before you even like steal the Ebon Hawk and you go planet hopping.
Yeah, yeah. So FF7 starts in a similar way, and yeah, the first game that they brought out, yeah, is that first 10 hours of the game where you're stuck in the one city. Anyway, I think I'm rambling a bit, but yeah, I think that, yeah, it was definitely worthy of being winner for most anticipated game. I'm definitely going to be into it. I'm probably going to replay the first part of Final Fantasy VII Remake to get hyped up again for it, and to actually just like be able to seamlessly continue into this next game. because this next game is going to have the actual open world, which seems more ambitious than I think they could possibly do, because in the first game it was on rails because you did just have the small area that you were stuck in, but once they open the world, it's going to be hard to imagine what kind of development time that would take.
Well, I suppose time will tell.
Yeah. Because I assume they're just going to keep the rest of the game on rails, like in Final Fantasy X or 13. But maybe they will completely open it up, and it will be amazing.
Well, there's a trade-off, because otherwise, you have to understand that like when you have two dimensions to a game, they're not additive. It's exponential. So if you have a really deep story, then the breadth of your world can't be that wide because otherwise you'd have to have all these characters with these really deep, rich backgrounds and meet ways of interacting with them. Every time you add that, you have to multiply a whole another set of tree of dialogue and events and whatnot. And it's the reason why like you have a wide open world like Breath of the Wild and very few NPCs. Most of it's either enemies or puzzles and whatnot. And you have a couple of villages with NPCs with any meaningful dialogue beyond "I like chickens." It's then it's very shallow and it's a mile wide. But whereas like with something like your standard RPG where you have a very limited, you're in this big city, but you can only go down these few sections of streets. But the characters you interact with are all really deep and rich. It's because you can either have a mile wide and an inch deep, or you can have these unfathomable depths, but you have to stay in a very narrow corridor.
Yeah.
And if you try to do both, your game is going to be first of all the file size would be enormous, especially if all that dialogue was voiced, and if it's all in. I mean, and then you have to voice it again for all the different languages because otherwise it's region locked. But I mean, even just the fact that like you take all the text from like Skyrim, for example, just the little incidental books that you could just happen upon. All the collected text is more than War and Peace. Just of all that to read, and you could spend hours and hours just reading all the books in Skyrim.
Yeah, there's a lot of books in Elder Scrolls Online too. They've got the same sort of thing going there.
Yeah. And that's just with text.
I quite often read that text, and it's worth it.
Yeah, and listen, you're the player that those things are for, but there's limits
choose
to
to
that.
ignore them if you want.
Because even if we had an unlimited hard drive and we had the unlimited ability to make a game that big, you don't have an unlimited time because otherwise your game would take literally forever to make and it would never release. So you have to. One of the things you have to be careful of when you're doing game development, this is something that I've learned from being in the industry, is that you have to have an understandable sense of your scope. You have to pick what you want to include, and you have to know what you can't include in order to have what you really want.
What do you mean by being in the industry? Are you
Finally made it. Took me a little while, but my time's been off.
Hey, fair enough, man. I'm just glad you're here. Cash flow.
Well, Mister, I don't know how he sounds to you, but he sounds a little quiet to me. Is your microphone turned down?
I'm looking at the bars now. Did you want to speak a bit, Cash? And I'll watch the bar.
I'll go ahead and speak. Is it a little low? Is it a little quiet?
It's going into the yellow. It's going a little less into the yellow than Shakes. So maybe turn yours up a little bit.
I'm just loud now. What can I say? All right, you guys figure that out. I'm gonna grab another beer.
Yep. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, Cash, we were going through. If you click on that document that I linked in MGB, we're just going through the document of the Game Awards, and we started at the bottom and are going up because that's the order that the announcements were made in during the actual show. So we've gone through esports stuff, content creator of the year, and we were talking about most anticipated game, and we'll be going into best multiplayer next, and
So far, what do we have as the best as the most anticipated game of the year. Is that Baldur's Gate 3? No, that's game of
Well,
the
no,
year.
it's not. It's Baldur's Gate 3 is already out.
Yeah. No spoilers
Wait.
about how the
We're,
rest
we're,
of the
talk,
show
we're
goes.
talking about games that have not come out yet, and that was what is currently the most anticipated game.
But just quickly,
I just got there.
Cash, are you able to be our screen for us, like you usually are?
Yeah, that should be fine. Yeah, let me go ahead and share it real quick. There it is. Boom.
Okay. Okay. I need to go in and click on watch stream. Oh man. Oh, there it is. All right. Cool. Now we're recording your screen.
Hell yeah.
So that will give some content for our video watchers on YouTube. Yeah, because I was trying to describe a game to Shakes earlier, and I couldn't really show him examples.
That's all right.
If you want, I can pull up the game real quick.
Well, we're past that now. We can move on from here and go into best multiplayer. And I'm actually very surprised. Anyway,
I'm not.
Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Street Fighter 6, Party Animals, Diablo 4, and Baldur's Gate 3. Now,
Is it bad that I've only heard of 2 of those titles?
really?
It was Diablo 4 and Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't heard of I didn't know Street Fighter 6 came out, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, or the Party Animals game. I didn't realize those had come out.
Yeah, well, they have.
Well, Street Fighter 6 is kind of like in the same boat as Tekken 8, where like if you're in that scene, you hear about it, but like if you're not into the fighting game scene, then there's no real effort to advertise it outside of those circles,
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's kind of like if someone told you, "Hey, a new Madden game came out," and then you're just be like, "Yeah," and water is wet.
Right.
It's like a new Madden game comes out like every year.
I see. No, that makes more sense if I'm being honest, because I'm not too into the Tekken or the Street Fighter series. I know about them, and I have friends actually that were really into it. However, for me, it just never really popped up on my radar as much.
Yeah, and because for me, fighting games are a lot like sports games, like like Madden, because you got Street Fighter 6, you got Tekken 8. Ultimately, it's 2 characters on a screen, and you have to learn their combos. And once you get that muscle memory, then you optimize your play styles against other players and all that stuff. And it all just kind of becomes this like meta, like the limitations of like human Twitch reaction, and it's less about it actually being a game.
Right. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I remember watching in the. This is back when I was around. It's been 4 or 5 years ago at this point. But a bunch of us got together and we watched a Tekken live stream. It was, I believe, the finals at the time, and it seemed a little spammy, but it was mostly just because it was meta. You know what I mean? Like they were using the specific characters that they were using. It was more so along those lines. So for me, it was still pretty interesting because watching high level gameplay like that, it's something else. Especially these people's reaction times and whatnot. But not really being into that community as much, you can appreciate how great it is, but you don't have the full appreciation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've always been more of a Tekken person, although I haven't played Tekken. Like, I haven't played many of those. Well, actually, I think I kind of prefer Soul Calibur more now. But anyway, I haven't really played those sort of fighting games very much. I'm more of a Smash Bros. Kind of person now. And plus, I don't like fighting games that are just about remembering, button combinations. I prefer ones that are more about how to do every move. Everyone knows how to do every move, and it's more about the actual, strategy of the fight rather than
memory. More it just comes down to the execution of the muscle memory, and at that point, I would challenge you, just have a challenge of playing Simon, because at that point, that's the most basic QuickTime event you could have. Is just playing a game of Simon.
Right.
But I will say, to nobody's great surprise, the best multiplayer award went to Baldur's Gate 3. And
I'm surprised. I'm surprised because it's not even like, personally, I wouldn't want to play Baldur's Gate 3 multiplayer because, you'd have to have people that are as patient as you. It's a game that you got to be patient in, and
Well, maybe it's a game that you need to be patient in, but I think that the appeal for the multiplayer in that game is the chaos that can happen. Like
Yeah.
you don't mix up your single player gameplay run where you can be the optimizing perfectionist where you want to do a very specific series of events if you want to play a certain style.
It's
When you
not
play
just that.
multiplayer,
It's not just that. It's also the narrative that you've got to sit and watch. You know, if you're playing multiplayer, you know, all four of you are like sitting there watching dialogue for like 70% of the time, and then you're waiting for your turn in a turn-based tabletop game, which yeah, it just seems a bit counterintuitive as a multiplayer, as a
true, but I would say like well for me, I first of all I want to clarify up front here. I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3 yet. I've been waiting for it to go on sale, which I assume it's going to do for the holiday sale on Steam. At which point I do intend to get it and play it. But I would think because I've seen enough of the play online without getting too spoilery, is the idea is to play it single player how you want to play it, and then once you've had your fill of that, then you play it multiplayer to just invite that chaos. Because
yeah.
hopefully, if everyone has already played through the single player, you already know what most of those dialogue events are, and you can just kind of skip, and get to the action part of it.
I suppose so.
You know,
Might be
I
worth
would
trying
almost
with
the way
someone.
you're describing it, the way you're describing it, mystery is it's almost like all right. So I recently started playing Hunt Showdown. It was a game that I had in the past thought about, but only recently started playing. One of the things that I really like about that game is, and I think it's more so to do with my the guy that I play it with a lot. We play it very, very slowly at first, but it's almost like it pops off. So at first, we try and be slow. We probably try to be a little methodical in our movements. But as soon as the fight pops off, it's chaos all around. You have instances where you get third party. You have instances where you have multiple. Well, yeah, essentially third party, but even up to fourth, fifth parties at times. And I personally absolutely love the chaos that comes with it after all the slowness, after all the tension builds up essentially, because
Yeah.
there's other people on the map. There's other people that are coming to kill you. So after having moving so slow to suddenly just explosive movements, to me that's the part that I find to enjoy about Hunt. And I can imagine
Is,
Baldur's
is
Gate
that a
3
battle
is
royale?
similar. It's a battle royale, but it's a slightly different take on it where now you all are looking for miss or clues that lead you to a boss, and then you fight over that boss.
I gotcha. Well, I just all right. So the general appeal of a battle royale, especially since they're trying to make games that are streamable, is that it's not an action game; it's a suspense game. Not a horror game; it's a suspense game because there's all that suspense between the gunfights of, oh, when's the next bout of action going to happen? And then when it happens, it's that release of that tension, and that makes it very watchable, very streamable. And I think that's why the battle royale genre has just been so massive. It kind of it's with PUBG and Twitch hand in hand, the whole genre has just blown up because of that.
And I would actually agree very much so. There's a lot of suspense that ends up building up in that, in just the moving slowly and silently, because it's almost like Tarkov. If you guys have ever played Tarkov,
Nah.
Yeah.
where every single movement that you make, anyone can notice if they're around you. Like if you reload, people are gonna hear that. If you run, people are gonna hear that. So it's kind of like that in an instance, and it gives that tension building because someone might be around you. Someone's probably there, and maybe you can't correctly identify where they are, and that really does make a difference.
All
It
right.
does add. It's
I don't
that
want to skip ahead in the discussion, but I have to ask: have you played the finals yet?
No, I haven't. I've been seeing you guys play it, and I haven't taken a peek yet, but
All
it
right.
looks interesting.
It's free. Just download
Yeah.
it while we're talking.
All
Yeah.
right, all right, I'll download it.
Yeah. We'll probably go into a discussion the finals after
Yeah,
the Game Awards.
that's for the finale here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, the point is with Baldur's Gate 3 for the multiplayer. After I played through it in single player, I would be switching over to the multiplayer. Now, once I have some game knowledge under my belt, and then it would be more chaotic and frenetic of just kind of like, oh, let's just rush through it and just see what happens. You throw spaghetti at the walls, everything goes wrong, but it's enjoyable because you're doing it with your friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I,
That's kind
I've
I'm like
seen you
that.
guys play Valheim and Terraria and stuff like that, and I just find it sort of hard to wrap my head around a long time commitment sort of game, with friends. Like I'm all for Jackbox and short games like that, but the commitment of like joining a Stellaris campaign or something like that. Yeah, it's a bit overwhelming because I have to make sure that I'm like there for next time and stuff like that.
Well, that's been a hard balance for us to strike in the server in general. Like because
Yeah.
you have people who can't make those kind of time commitments, and as much as like Scarlett and I would love to have these big long uh, games that run for a long time or having a dedicated server. It's hard to coordinate that, and most people don't have the time. So we usually and some of the better games, like the finals is only 3 player. Most multiplayer games are only 4 players, and oftentimes we'll have a game night where there'll be up to 8 or even 12 people who are all in the same voice chat who all want to play, and so we have to play something more of a party game.
Yeah.
And in those cases, and then there's also the price tag because most of the people who are online with us here, they're broke as a joke, living paycheck to paycheck. They can't be shelling out $60 every month for a new game, or even $10 every other week for something else. So we got to kind of either stick with the cheap ones or even the free ones.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna, as much as I love you guys, and I'd give you the shirts off my back if I had to. I'm not gonna be buying video games for everybody just to have them all play. So we
Yeah.
kind of, our
Yeah.
strategy is if it's free, it's for me.
Yeah.
No,
Anyway,
it sounds like, it's not quite. No one can expect that of you.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love playing with everybody, but I can't just go about shilling out $50, 2-3 times over just because I want to play with everybody.
yeah.
So
I think
like
we're
those
stating
games
the
that
obvious
come
here.
area.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
But I
We
mean,
should
like,
probably
me and
move
my
on
buddies-
because we've been
All
on
right,
that
all
for a
right.
little while. So next we've got best sports racing game, which is something I don't personally really care about. I've
Yeah,
been
none of those is a remake of Burnout 3, so I don't care.
I am kind of interested in Hot Wheels Unleashed 2.
I was
Just
actually going to
because
mention that one. That one looks interesting.
It does
yeah.
look fun. I'll give it that. It definitely does look fun. I keep waiting for them to remake Burnout 3: The Takedown, which was originally made for the PlayStation 2, and it was the greatest racing game of all time, and they've just never done a graphical upgrade for it, and it has not aged well.
Yeah, I'm kind of mainly just interested in Hot Wheels because I played it a lot back in the 16-bit days, and it's more interesting that whole you're a tiny car in a normal sized world and everything's big and the kind of unique tracks that you can get from that. It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
Whereas
no,
the other
I
ones are
was,
just
I was,
normal,
Yeah.
boring, ordinary
yeah.
cars.
I had that wool pulled over my eyes too, like back in the old Team Fortress Classic days, because people would make a level that looks like a kid's bedroom, and you're tiny little soldiers, but then you realize, oh wait, no, they just made everything really big, so you feel small.
Yeah.
But it's the same game.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
Now, for the best sim and strategy games,
All right,
like
let's list them.
Yeah,
Advance
go ahead.
Wars 1 and 2, Reboot Camp, Cities Skylines 2, Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem Engage, and Pikmin 4.
This
Um,
one was actually
I-
a legit surprise for me.
Yeah, same for me. I've never played any Pikmin games, so I don't really have much to say about that. What I will talk about, though, is Cities Skylines 2. I actually bought that for its normal price, non-deluxe version, and I played it for 2 hours and 1 minute, and I decided to refund it because it ran like crap. I read reviews, and apparently it runs like crap on even like supercomputers, and it was just terribly optimized, and it sort of starts over and doesn't have all the features that Cities Skylines 1 now has with all its DLC. And I kind of want to try it more. I'm probably actually going to have to pirate it next time I play it because, like
He
with
said
Cities,
out loud in a live stream.
because I mean, I don't know. Should I edit that out?
Here's the
or-
thing. I think City Skylines 2 is running into the same problem that
Yeah.
Starfield.
Like,
did.
I'm probably going to buy it when I start seeing it get better, and
But this
But
is
still,
a
yeah.
larger issue that a lot of newer games, especially sequel games, are running into. City Skylines 2 and also Starfield, where you have a new game comes out that's trying to be better than the game that came out before it, but they don't have a good sense of scope. They oversell it and they come up short on features. It's missing a lot of things, and it's competing with a game that has been out for years, that has an active mod community.
Oh
City
yeah.
Skylines 1 has a huge mod community that has fixed everything from like optimization problems to launch bugs, all that stuff. All that stuff has been fixed by the community, and the same thing with Skyrim. And the funny thing is like I think it was like less than a month after Starfield came out, there were fewer players playing Starfield than were going back to playing Skyrim again, because that's what people were saying. Like Starfield made me want to play Skyrim again instead, because
Yeah.
Skyrim. Nobody plays vanilla Skyrim. Everybody plays, modded Skyrim because it's so easy to mod it,
I
especially
didn't
like in Steam.
I didn't play Starfield, but from what I saw of it, it made me think I wanted to play No Man's Sky again, because it kind of tries to
And
be
that's
No
the other
Man's
thing
Sky and it
too.
fails. Like it tries
Well,
to be a Skyrim game and No Man's Sky, but it fails miserably at the actual exploration part and the actual
well, let's be fair,
exploration. Yeah,
because we all remember the launch of No Man's Sky, and that really should have been a lesson for the entire industry to learn, to not oversell, to not deliver early if it's not feature ready. And the fact that Starfield did the exact same missteps is just an enormous demonstration that just the industry doesn't learn anything.
Well, you know what? If
Yeah,
you really want to get into that, it also seems like you can. This all to me is giving me flashbacks of Cyberpunk 2077,
oh hell
and
yeah.
yeah,
that
same thing, same
same
thing.
exact issue. Nobody in the industry has figured out, like, you don't want to oversell. I mean, maybe there have been companies that do, but you know what I mean. Overall, in the industry, it seems like there's quite a bit of overselling that happens and not delivering. And Cash Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't a cheap game. That was a pretty expensive
Oh,
game to
but
make, and
by the way,
yeah.
one thing I'm surprised about is that Hogwarts Legacy isn't on any nomination.
Well, I don't want to bring politics into the podcast, but I think that may have been a political decision from the awards side.
That is
I can see
so
that.
that's terrible because
That's
it is one of the best games of the year, definitely nominatable. So that is just for it to just be about politics is just bullcrap.
But you have to remember, there's a certain
Like
like
not just
if
that,
you bring it in, you
but
would
it
have to deal
launched
with the
stable.
backlash.
It's launched really stable too. You
Yeah.
know,
And here's
uh,
the thing, like Will Smith could be in a really good movie and he could be a really good actor in that movie, but he's not going to get invited back to the Oscars.
yeah,
Yeah, pretty much.
It's
It's that kind
it's
of situation.
it's not just a meritocracy. There's a lot more to it than that.
yeah. That's just a shame.
Um,
It is, but
but
that's simply the world we live in, unfortunately. I mean, these things have to be taken into consideration because at the end of the day, if something like that were to cause an issue, be it no matter what side, they take all of the backlash. The Game Awards take all the backlash, and then that for some people, it's enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to participate next year.
Yeah.
yeah,
So they're just essentially
and
trying to
when
cover
you're
all
when
their.
you're talking about like a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's a big gamble to take. And yeah,
Pretty much.
once you get to billion with a B, it's all political.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
You don't get that rich, you don't get that kind of level of influence without having to take politics into account. It's
yeah.
almost an impossibility.
Well, anyway, we probably shouldn't go too deep into that.
No need.
Anything else you wanted to say about any of the strategy games on the
No,
list, or
no.
that
I am
Pikmin
waiting.
Four
I
One?
am waiting for what's called Civilization 7. That's what
Oh,
I'm waiting for currently.
oh, has that been announced? Has it?
I don't think so. I
Oh,
think it's
okay,
been
Man,
confirmed, but not
I'm just
announced.
vibing playing Civilization 5.
you're still playing five.
I don't care if it's the dumbed down version. It's the kind I like.
Well,
For
yeah,
me,
I've sometimes been
for-
tempted to go back to playing four, just because it's got the most complete and unbelievably huge, mod community. Like
Yeah,
Civilization Four's got like this total conversion mod that makes the game like 20 times longer and more detailed. So
I get
like,
that. No,
yeah,
and I understand that there is a target player base for that in the same way that like Dark Souls exists because some players just can't get an erection unless the game's beating their ass with a meat tenderizer.
Yeah, I feel like that's more common than you realize in the Dark Souls community.
yeah. I've never played any of the Dark Souls games, nor have I played the Elden Ring.
But I'm just saying that like not everyone needs to get to that kind of level of depth, and I think that Civilization Five was a step in a good direction, even though it was definitely dumbing the game down. But like
Yeah.
there were some people who were just like I don't want to take the time to learn all the nuance of Civilization Four. Just give me Civilization Five, where it gives me a checklist at the end of every turn to make sure I'm doing everything that I need to with all of my units, because that was such a big complaint from the previous versions. And I know that there's mods now that could make it so Civilization 4 functions like that. But the fact that Civilization 5 came out of the box like that demonstrated that they were learning about what it was that their user base wanted, or at least what they anticipated their user base wanted.
And I would say that they probably anticipated that pretty correctly because not everyone, like you said, there's a lot of people that don't want to put that time and effort into learning each and every single freaking nuance, dealing with each and every civilization differently. You know what I mean? Some people do just want to plug and play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of my biggest this is just the general advice to the industry is that you have to have a good tutorial, because if you're competing with what's the new game this week, you need to make your game easy to learn immediately, so that way people can play the game. Because I've played games, I've played like demos on Steam, where or I played a game for like 2 hours or less, and if I'm struggling with the tutorial to just learn how to operate the game, like get through the interface and the menus and to do the basic functions of the game, I'm going to put that game down and say, nope, not worth my time. If you've made it if you've made it overly complex and you're trying to front load too much, I'm just going to put a wall up and say, nope, not for me, and return it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say
Uh,
that. I would say that's not
Just
uncommon
depends what you're
because
into.
it really can take up. I mean, dude, especially now, like as you work and as you do other things, it's like, I don't want the full time commitment of having to learn a whole new game.
yeah.
Sometimes I do just want to be able to jump in and have fun.
Like one of the things I like about Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order, is the fact that you can go back to that game after having not played it for months, and you can go into the training mode. You can go straight into the training mode and relearn. You can redo the whole tutorial at any time, and then jump back into your main game. So that way, you know what buttons to push to do whatever combo you normally have to do. Because that's about as close to a Souls-like as I've ever gotten. So I appreciate having that accessibility, because you want to be able to have your audience reach the maximum depth of their game.
You could also look at it like games like Minecraft, for example, which are super easy to just pick up right where you left off, essentially.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward, and there's a reason why it became one of the largest games in the world. I mean, even me and my friends, we bought ourselves a physical server so that we can do our yearly Minecraft binge. Yeah, that typically runs about 2 weeks or so, but it's like 2 weeks of just either getting off work, coming straight home, and playing Minecraft for like 8 hours, every 8 hours straight, sometimes even. So
Yeah.
there are
Minecraft's a game that I
immense
keep
value
going
to it.
back to on a regular occasion when I'm in the mood for it.
Minecraft, I feel like it's kind of unfair to make that comparison, because Minecraft is its own league. It is the exception to every rule. There's something magical about it. Although I will counter, to be fair, that like when I go into playing it, like I'll go to try a sprint and I'll hold down shift to sprint, but then I got to remember, oh no, I got to double tap forward to sprint because it had that
Right.
instead. But like riding a bike, it only takes a little while, and then it's like, okay, I'm hitting E to open up my inventory, and then I'm double tapping to sprint, and then once you get that muscle memory back, it's very easy to get back into that game.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's like riding a bike. You almost never really forget.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to best family game. I don't know if there's much reason to talk about this for long, but Disney Illusion Island, Party Animals, Pikmin 4, Sonic Superstars, and Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
I mean, with the
Yeah, really,
silver
that
we're always trying to make sure the family's having a great time.
yeah. So with
family
this
is not.
one,
Yeah, I just live on my own, so yeah, that's not the kind of game for me normally. But I did used to play a lot of Mario Party for a bit. Had a bit of a binge on that, and did that through Discord, on like a Discord server that organized Mario Party games. And I kind of wonder, Yeah, I saw Party Animals come up at the awards, and I kind of wondered if that's a similar sort of game that, I could get into.
Yeah, more or
Or
less.
maybe even our server could check out.
Yeah. In this case, the best family game, it was really just a competition between Mario Brothers Wonder or Pikmin 4, because those are both Nintendo games, as opposed to the rest. I mean, Disney is trying to put up a fight, but honestly, they're a movie making company trying to step into the game making arena, and they have not really demonstrated that they're equipped to be a competitor. I mean, their games are decent, but they're not like game of the year winning awards
Yeah, they're
level
decent.
yet.
Like their
Not only
Epic
that,
Mickey did pretty well, from what I
yeah.
remember. Haven't played any of them. But I remember Epic Mickey did well for its time, and
But they're also
they've had a
stepping into
couple of
this
good
at the,
ones.
in my opinion, incorrect time. They just had their fourth, I believe it was their third or fourth quarter, no, third quarter releasings, and they have been hemorrhaging money for some time.
They kind
So
of
I
deserve to, in my opinion, with them holding on to
Yeah, you know what? I
their last
agree, but
release
I didn't want to
haven't
really
been
take
good.
it to a political place.
their. Yeah,
I'm just saying more so like they're, you know, looking at it purely financially. There's just a few. Their movies haven't performed as well as they would have hoped. Looking at it just financially. So I think they have bigger issues to deal with in that sense of getting those movies back to the positive,
yeah.
back to turning more of a profit,
Just
and
quickly,
then
they
that's
need to
probably what
stop.
they'll jump into.
Yeah, just quickly, they need to stop illegally holding on to intellectual property.
Well, that's a whole other discussion. I mean, I agree, but yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but if they have any care of self-preservation as a company, then they need to understand. And I think Hollywood is collectively understanding that, like, if you get woke, you go broke.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. They've been doing way too
I'm
much of that.
I mean, because the thing is, there's a difference between quote unquote woke and having a diverse cast. You can have a diverse cast, and if the writing's good, look at Miles Morales. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? I personally think that was a really greatly written story, a really greatly written movie, and that proves that this does work. You just have to actually have the writing to go behind it.
yeah. The writing is normally like force fed to you. It's like forced in and really obvious that it's trying to make a message. That the
yeah.
message needs to be subtle. You know.
Well, it needs to at least be organic, because, like, if you look at a show like Game of
Right.
Thrones, you had a ton of diversity in Game of Thrones, but it made sense. Like, you had the darker skinned people in these southern territories where they were getting more sun, and you had the northern territories all very fair skinned people, because it was in an area that would get less sunlight. Like, it made geographical sense, and you could
Yeah.
have all that diversity in your show. Whereas, like with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I'm sure that there were
Oh
seven little
God.
people in Hollywood who would have loved to have had those jobs, but they said, "Oh no, we can't have the dwarves be played by dwarves. That would be insensitive." No, you freaking dolt.
Like, come on,
Yeah, that
you're
photo,
literally
that
just
picture
taking
I
it
saw
away
of
from them.
the seven new dwarves or the seven weird mix of what
Not
would you call
dwarves.
it? Yeah, not dwarves. Only
It
one's a
doesn't.
dwarf.
Look, I'm just saying that, like, this is like reverse cultural appropriation, because, like,
Yeah,
now you've taken this role that would have gone to. Listen, I'm sure that most little people like have at least considered the possibility that they're probably going to have to, like, get a job being like an entertainer, like in Hollywood. Like, hey, there's got to be a role for that, right? I don't know, but I feel like there was seven qualified little people actors who had that role taken away because Hollywood had the wrong idea of what diversity is supposed to be about. But anyways,
yeah,
we're way off topic now.
yep, yep. So let's move on to best fighting game. God of Rock, Mortal
Yep.
Kombat 1, Nickelodeon All Star Brawl 2, Pocket Bravery, and Street Fighter 6. Now, the first one I want to talk about is Nickelodeon All Star Brawl 2. I haven't seen anything about it. I haven't played it, but I have seen a lot about the first one, and it was apparently, like, gameplay wise and technically wise, comparable to Smash Bros in a lot of ways. It had good gameplay, but its main problem was that they seem to not have the budget to have any licensing of actual voices. So the first game felt really soulless. But apparently with this new one, they've actually they've actually got the licenses and actually have voice actors, giving more personality to the game.
They've
And I
increased the
think,
caliber of their soul.
yeah, yeah. And so I think that's why Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 is, trending quite a lot lately and is a lot more popular than the first one was, and being a lot more of a competitor to things like Smash Bros. And Metaverse.
I'm actually surprised that Street Fighter 6 won. I thought Mortal Kombat 1 was going to have it because all I've seen is just the advertisement for that, which, mind you, half of any video game's budget, any AAA budget, goes to advertising.
And it kind of makes sense when you're dealing with such high numbers. You know, I was just talking to my roommates about this the other day. Games kind of cost much less than they should. If you put, if you think about how much it costs to develop one of
Yeah,
those
that's
AAA.
why they have to keep on resorting to all this microtransaction crap, because they haven't really gone up in price, but the cost of making them has gone up.
Right, and that's why we see a new industry standard of about $70 now it's starting to go up.
Yeah,
But even then, it's like you still have to get most of your sales. You have to do volume, basically.
but
You have to get
it's
volume.
not much more than when 16-bit games were $50. Um,
I
and
actually don't remember that time.
yeah, I do. Like from my opinion, because I'm a lot older, I have seen, back in the
Me in
16-bit
the
days,
room.
the games weren't much less than what they are now, and that it was usually like a small team of 10 people was considered a pretty big game company at the time, and you just had 16-bit graphics, pixels, and
Well, it's
yeah,
it's a lot of things. All right. So like the it was kind of funny that the $50 video game became like the benchmark for so long. It was kind of because it was a balance of two things on the scale. One, like it wasn't like that making video games got any cheaper to like counteract with inflation. It just meant that the hardware technology, the cost of the technology got cheaper to make games of a higher quality for essentially the same production cost as like the games of back then, because making a cartridge
yeah,
back then was really
yeah. It
expensive,
was
but all the
probably.
parts got
It
cheaper.
might have been just as hard to make a quality 16-bit game back then as it is to make a AAA game now, like because of how far
Yeah,
technology
and
has
and
moved
and,
forward.
and there's also been a bunch of other trickery, but like honestly, the means of keeping a game $50 leading into like the early 2010s was starting to get really bad because all they were trying to make up that money on the back end from like microtransactions or information selling, and it ended up leading to a lot of dirty business practices. Where now, if we really want to pay the sticker price for a video game without having to be dealing with any of that, we need to start accepting like the $70 price tag for a AAA game as being the norm.
Yeah, I kind of like. So I saw people get all like pissed off about Zelda going up in price, but I was like, I thought it's kind of about time, and I kind of think that if games were allowed to charge like 100 to 110, then maybe they wouldn't be so motivated to go down all these mobile game battle pass microtransaction crap that they're doing to us now in full price
Well,
games. Yeah, you pay full price and then you've still got to buy a battle pass and all
well,
this
here's
crap.
the thing. I'm kind of got a foot in two camps on this because on the one hand, I would prefer to just pay a flat price, get my game, and call it my game. Like that's why I always liked like getting the box in the store of having the physical disc and
Yep.
hopefully having a functioning game at launch where you don't have to worry about day one DLC to fix all the shit that's wrong
Oh
with it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
But on
another
the
trend
other
lately.
hand,
Yeah,
But
and
on the
that
other hand, I do like, especially with multiplayer games, and we're going to end up talking more about this with the finals, because the finals is free, but there is a battle pass that you can buy, so the game can still generate revenue without having to like shove ads down your throat. Like
yeah.
you don't play in the finals and see billboards with real time ads being broadcasted the way they did with like the
Uh,
first prototype
FIFA
game.
and FIFA games. The
Yeah,
sports
like
games.
What's it?
like it was wild that you could like you'd be running around New York City playing in a single player game, and then you're getting these occasional updates So that way you'd have new ads on the billboards in the city. And that was one of the ways that they generated revenue on the back end, because they were trying to sell a $70 game for $50. And that's the reason why you ended up with things like loot boxes and microtransactions and junk like that. On the other hand, and the only thing I don't like about that was the unethical, immoral way that they were using those things. I like the idea of DLC and content that you can get a la carte. Like if you really like the
Right.
game and you want to play more of it, you can toss the developers an extra $20 and get this extra section of Scarlet and Violet to go to these islands to go catch more Pokemon if you really want to, but you don't have to be able to play the full main game. I think that's a great model. Like if they want to be able to make up that extra $20 per game sale, they could lean on the whales who can be spending $100 a year, buying the battle passes and the DLC. And if those people have the money to support the game, where other people cannot, you still have more people playing it, and the developers can still get the revenue that they want without having to raise the overall price of the game for everyone.
Right.
I think
because
that's
you
a
have to
good model
remember,
if you use it well.
it's a balancing act, because if you raise it too high, then you're gonna start losing player base. You're gonna start having people saying, you know what, I can't justify spending, say, $80, $90 in a game, whereas they would justify to $70, say. And it's a balancing act of being able to capture the most amount of people at the same time that you're making money back on the game. And it's not just that the background aspects of making money really did, I would argue, you're right, it did help them in a sense keep that such low price tag for quite some time. But I think as we move forward, we're going to start seeing more and more, 70 is going to become the standard, but I don't see it stopping there. I don't see it
Yeah, I
stopping
mean,
at 70.
yeah, if you completely eliminated loot boxes and battle passes and whatnot, all the extra revenue stream of like microtransactions, you're looking at like a regular sticker price of $90, which is going to give most people sticker shock, and then you're going to lose way more players that way.
Or
And
they'll resort to piracy.
exactly, and piracy, and I'm not trying to take it to a political stance here. This is an economic stance. Piracy is a legitimate economic force that you need to account for as a business. But
Yeah.
and that's it. That's the whole. You can look it up on
That's just the
yourself on your
reality.
own. That's the reality of it. But like I can speak personally, there are free games that I've played like on my phone that I have spent an embarrassing amount of money on, because and the way I justify that is I have spent so many hours playing this game that I can justify the entertainment, the money per entertainment hour. Like if you go to a movie, if you go to a 2-hour movie, you're spending $20. That's $10 an hour for entertainment.
All right,
And if
I'm just
play-
wondering, what is your mobile game sin? Like, for example, mine was Forge of
Candy Crush,
Empires. Forge of Empires, I played for like 5 years straight and spent probably a total of $200 extra on for a free game, so it was just $200.
All right. So currently, I'm playing Pokemon Go, a game called Necromerger, Egg Incorporated.
Wow, that's a
and
lot, actually, to keep up with that many.
And Shop Titans. And the thing with Shop Titans, I have spent probably the most money on Shop Titans, and that's the game I really want to quit, because like at this point it has become more of like a second job.
Yeah.
And this is a whole other discussion, but there's a lot of psychology to that game that makes you keep playing long after you stop enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm a key player in the guild that I'm in, and I don't want to let my guild down because I enjoy that interaction.
And you got to make sure you do your daily quests and log in every
all
day.
that stuff. I got to participate in the events, and so now it's like I got to scratch out.
How do you manage that for
play
like the 4 or 5 games you listed? That's a lot
Well,
of
I
time.
mean, for Pokemon Go, that's
you-
my excuse to get some exercise. You know, like
do
that's
on the
my
way to
little
things.
reward.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Necromerger, there's energy elements to it. So like you can only do so much before you run out of energy, which is self-limiting unless you want to use gems, which again you have to spend real world money to do, which I have not done. I have spent real world money on Necromerger, but that's for like permanent boosts. And like with Egg Incorporated, I think I've
Oh
I've
yeah.
probably spent a little bit of money on that just to unlock the like there's like a piggy bank element to it where like all the actions you do put money in your piggy bank, and the longer you wait, the more money you're gonna get when you crack the thing open. But you have to pay $5 to open it. Occasionally there'll be a super rare sale where that will be reduced. It'll be like $3 to crack open your piggy bank. It doesn't happen often. I think maybe a couple times a year. But when it happens, it's like, oh, I can get this for $3, and now you've got like 100 million gold eggs that you can use to spend as your premium currency.
Okay.
Um,
Anyway, yeah, we should probably get moving because we've still got a lot of categories to go through. So that was best fighting game. Next, we got best RPG, and the candidates for that are Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Lies of P, Sea of Stars, and Starfield. Now,
and to nobody's great surprise,
yeah,
Baldur's Gate 3. Woohoo!
yeah, Starfield. I don't know much about. I don't want to play it. It doesn't look appealing to me. Like I'd rather play No Man's Sky or something. Sea of Stars is a surprise. I might want to get that, and if I do, I'll want to get it on the Switch so I can like play it in bed and stuff. But it looks like my kind of turn-based RPG. It looks similar to Chrono Trigger kind of gameplay, so I'm interested in that. But yeah.
yeah. I mean, I remember seeing the trailers for Starfield, and I really wanted Starfield to be good. Like I'm not a particularly spiritual man, but I prayed. I prayed for it to be good. I really wanted it to be good, and oh, it was just a reminder that the industry doesn't learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Although honestly, and as much as funny as it is that Baldur's Gate 3 just completely swept every category it was in, I'm honestly surprised that Final Fantasy that one
yeah, I
didn't
yeah, I haven't
didn't
gotten to
win the
play that.
RPG specific.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't gotten to play
Well,
Final Fantasy 16 because of the stupid PlayStation exclusivity. So I've got to
yeah.
wait like a year before I can play it. Or
Well, that and Final Fantasy as a series and Square Enix at large has a pretty rabid fan base,
yeah,
and
yeah, I'm
like
one of them. I'm one of them. But yeah, I can't play that one for a while yet. Oh, yeah,
well,
which sucks.
but no, Baldur's Gate 3 won, and that just became the running theme of the whole evening, watching the award ceremony.
Yeah, so we can talk more about Baldur's Gate 3 once we get further in. So we might as well move on to best action/adventure game. We've got Alan Wake 2, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And that's the only one that I've played. I've only played Tears of the Kingdom. None of those others. And
I gotta say,
I thought, Tears of the Kingdom was an amazing game, but it was a little too big for me because other games started coming out, and I abandoned it once I got 3 temples done and had 1 left. Did quite a lot of side content, but I probably only scratched about 30% of the game's content overall. I barely went down into the depths at all.
See, now with the Tears of the Kingdom, I watched gameplay of that, and it just made me want to go back and play Breath of the Wild again. And so I have to ask you, as someone who's actually played it, do you feel like it offered enough that was different and unique from the original game to justify having it be a whole other game?
Oh
Or
hell
was it
yeah!
just
Oh hell yeah!
yeah?
I won't want to go back to Breath of the Wild. Like it's that good, that much better.
Uh,
That I
All
won't go
right,
back to
all
Breath
right.
of the Wild.
That's a pretty strong endorsement because
Yeah,
I've always said that with a sequel, if you're going to make a sequel to anything, whether it's a story, a movie, or a game, especially, it needs to be different enough to stand up on its own rather than just being a continuation.
yeah, yeah. Like it's an amazing game, and the experimental and physics stuff that you can do with the tools that they give you, like you can build stuff and build vehicles and um, make
Yeah,
the game do really weird things. And there's been like all these memeable shorts on YouTube about people making things happen in the game that are absolutely wild. Like
yeah,
making mech suits that shoot lasers and all kinds of stuff.
yeah. I mean, I always love a game that embraces the idea that there are going to be players who are going to try and use these tools to break the game
Yeah,
and give them the tools to do exactly that. Like play the game your way, because as soon as you try to make it so they can't do that, you're interrupted. You're you're screwing up rule zero of a game.
Yeah.
Have fun.
And I mean, they do it in a good way because, out in the world, you can experiment in absolutely wild ways because you get all the tools that you want to get. But then you're still limited to certain supplies within the trials. So, the trials can still be, difficult puzzles where you have limited things that you can use. But even there, some people have found ways to break the trials in wild ways as well. Because they made this game where they just let you break the crap out of it if you want to, and it's really entertaining for that reason mainly, and the
Ash, did you
combat
play
is solid,
Zelda?
and yeah,
Actually, I've never played Zelda. The only one that I actually came close to playing was, or not even came close to playing, but watching in person was Breath of the Wild. My
uh-huh.
buddy absolutely loves the Zelda games, so I was more than happy to just chill out and watch him play for a
Yeah.
while. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
One thing though is that
For me, Breath of the Wild wasn't really a Zelda game in the classical sense, but like when I
exactly.
watched my girlfriend play it, I was like, okay, I have to play that game. I played it at her house for like 3 hours, and I said, okay, I have to buy a Switch now, and that was the game that sold the Switch to me.
Yeah, the thing is, Zelda's kind of gone into a new era. There's the 16-bit era, where it had a certain style to it, and then the N64 handheld era, where it had a very like sort of rote formula, where you just
Handheld.
go into a dungeon, get an item that allows you to advance further in the game, and you usually have to do it in a particular order. But since Breath of the Wild, they've gone into a lot more of a free roam open world thing where you don't have to go in a particular order and you're not, blocked off from places because you don't have certain abilities that you get out of dungeons. So Zelda has entered like a new era, and I think it's kind of a different type of game now than it was in the N64 era and GameCube.
Yeah,
And
and
Wii, it was
I would
still
say that I would say that when they did Breath of the Wild, they understood that because they were making it a mile wide and it was going to be an inch deep, they had to make sure that all that travel was part of the core gameplay enjoyment. Like the fact that they added, climbing and having stamina to climb meant that every single thing that you climbed was its own little puzzle. Like, oh, can I make it to that ledge? Am I going to have enough mushrooms to eat while I'm climbing? And the actual travel itself with the atmospheric music, being able to capture and tame horses, all of that became part of the core game of just the exploration itself became a huge part of the game focus, and that's how you do it with an open world game.
yeah. So do you have anything to say about any of those other games? I never even played the original Resident Evil 4. Star
Uh,
Wars, I tend to avoid Star Wars games, as you know. I'm just not
well, with
interested in that
Jedi
world.
Survivor, like I was looking forward to Jedi Survivor, but
Yeah,
given the mixed reception that it had gotten,
mostly for
and,
performance issues, I heard. Like the
well,
gameplay was
yeah,
good, but it was performance issues that were making
yeah,
the reviews mixed.
and I'll take a risk on a mixed review game if the price tag is like an indie game level type deal. I'll give it the that benefit of the doubt. But when you're talking about a AAA price tag, it's got to be good. Like I got to hear
Mm,
that it's good from my peers. I don't want to hear about it from the professional reviewers where their job is on the line if they don't give it a good review. So like whenever like Scarlett, for example, will promote a game to me, he's got no skin in the game to tell me that it's a good game or not. If it's a good game, he'll tell me. If it's not, he'll tell me, and I trust that. And that's that. And the game publishers need to understand that they can't buy publicity anymore because you're going to have the players who are going to play it, and they're going to respond in real time and tell everyone, "Hey, by the way, this game is full of bugs. Avoid it like the plague," and it's not going to sell. They need to make sure they have a finished product on launch day.
yeah. All right, shall we move on to best action game?
Let's do it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. There's that subtitle thing that you were complaining about earlier, Shakes. Dead Island 2, Ghost Runner 2, Hi-Fi Rush, and Remnant 2. Now, I haven't played any of those. I was tempted to try Hi-Fi Rush because it looks so original.
I do recommend it.
Yeah. Uh, I really enjoyed Armored Core way back in the PlayStation days. I remembered playing it, but that's really about all I know about it. Like I think that was like Armored Core 3 or 2 or something.
Yeah, I played Dead Island 1 and I was just thoroughly disappointed with it. Like I really felt like it was an overly complicated, underwhelming version of Borderlands.
Right.
But I do respect that Dead Island 2, Ghost Runner 2, and Remnant 2 just all have the respect to just put a 2 on the end of their story, the game
Yeah.
title, and just call it a sequel like a friggin' professional rather than everyone else who has to use, this mess of colons and subtitles and all sorts of
Electric
garbage.
Boogaloo 2 and
I'm disappointed
Rambo
that
First
Hi-Fi
Blood
Rush
Part
didn't.
1.
I'm disappointed that Hi-Fi Rush didn't win. Because it's like the best way to incorporate a rhythm-based game into a capital G game. So it's not just Dance Dance Revolution. It's not Guitar Hero. It's a game, but it's rhythm-based. Like Tomb of the Necro Dancer is another great
Crypt of the
example.
Necrodancer, it's called.
Yes, thank you. Crypt of the Necro Dancer, where it's a rhythm-based, game, but it's still a game. Or
Yeah.
uh, Bullets Per Minute, BPM.
Yeah, I've seen gameplay of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried playing that. Some people love it. I couldn't really get into it, but like Hi-Fi Rush is really a great example of how you do a rhythm-based game correctly and make it a game more than just matching colors.
Yeah. You got anything to
Actually
say,
don't have
Cash?
experience. Not quite. I don't have experience with any of these games, if I'm being honest. A little bit of Dead Island 1, because I did watch some gameplay of it, and I watched a little bit of the background and whatnot, but I didn't actually have too much experience. Like, for example, this is the first I'm hearing of Hi-Fi Rush, and it seems like something I'm gonna have to check out later.
Yeah,
Dude, get it,
it
get
looks
it.
cool, but yeah, so many other games are coming out now that it feels old now. It feels like old news, and there's more newer games that I'm
Dude,
interested in.
yeah. It
Um,
feels like it's been a long year, huh?
yeah, uh,
All right.
I think after after COVID, basically all the games that they were working on and were delaying during COVID have all come out at
Ugh.
once now. Uh,
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. It's been like a shotgun of that.
yeah. So now we got best
Anyways,
VR AR game. I don't know
I don't have a
why.
VR headset,
Yeah, no, I don't.
so I don't know.
Yeah, I've never experienced VR yet.
I mean, I've done it. I've gone to events where they were showcasing them.
Yeah.
I would like to get a Meta Quest 3. I was thinking about getting one for Christmas.
I'm not
Um,
sure why they attached AR to that. I consider an AR game something like Pokemon Go, so I'm not sure why that's there. But anyway,
well,
the
it's
nominees
Uh,
are Gran Turismo
I would.
7, Humanity, Horizon's Call of the Mountain, Resident Evil Village VR mode, and Synapse. Don't really
You
know
know,
about
this
any of
reminds me
those.
of, yeah, not really quite myself either, but because I do have a VR headset. I believe I have a Quest 2. And I gotta say, one of the things that I really do like about, like, for example, a VR genre is the immersibility. I played, it was Star Wars. I forgot which Star Wars it was. It was the one where you're able to control a one of the flyers, and it was freaking amazing, I must say. It
wait, wait, wait,
so
wait, wait. Wait, like a vehicle?
yeah, it was goodness gracious, I can't quite remember which Star Wars it was. You were basically, yeah, you were fighting. You're either in the Resistance or you were part of the Empire.
Oh, Squadron.
Yes, squadrons,
Yeah.
squadrons.
Okay. So I think all right. So here's like a lot of people complain about the VR. Like I haven't played it. I don't own one, but I have used it. And one of the things that people complain about is the motion sickness, and that's when like you're playing as like a person walking around in first person mode. And we don't have one of those Omni tracks like freaking Ready Player One where you can walk in any direction. Like we're limited to the space we have inside of our room.
Yeah.
But I think that VR is very well suited for vehicle games where you're in the cockpit of something. So
Great.
like if you were playing no
Ace
First Citizen,
Combat.
for example, that's
that, that
another
I
great
was I'm
game.
trying to think Elite Dangerous, for example, where you like
Right.
for a long time in that game you could never leave your cockpit. You were always in your ship. It's great for that because you have the frame of the ship around you to give you that frame of reference, and you can just play in your seat, and you can just use your keyboard or your control pad or whatever you're using.
So
That's why I really think that that's a
yeah.
great game. those are great games for something like that. Like anything where you're in a vehicle, like which is why I'm surprised that Gran Turismo 7 didn't win. First of all, Gran Turismo is a really popular series, and having that for a VR headset sounds really good if you've got like the steering wheel peripherals.
Oh yeah, I think that would be amazing.
That would be amazing until you crash.
Yeah. I haven't played Gran Turismo since the PlayStation days, PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it quite a lot then, but
Great.
there's games that
I think-
interest me a lot more now.
But and this kind of comes back to what I was saying before about games that are streamable, because like if you can stream yourself playing Resident Evil, where you're using like the melee weapons and you see the wacky things that the hands are doing on the screen with like a knife, and then you like get somebody stuck to a wall using the physics. It's funny, or like you throw a knife up at the ceiling and then now it's stuck there. And now you're trying to jump, but your character can't jump.
Yeah. All right, shall we move on to best mobile game?
Yeah, what do we got?
Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, Honkai Star Rail, Hello Kitty Island Adventure, Monster Hunter Now, and Terra Nil. Now, I have a lot to say about Monster Hunter Now because I've been playing it like 3 times a day. I've been going for a walk and going out and hunting monsters. I think it's a really good game. It feels a little bit feature poor compared to Pokemon Go. Like I actually re-downloaded Pokemon Go after I got Monster Hunter Now, and I just found it overwhelming with like just how much there is in Pokemon Go. Monster Hunter Now is starting off at a bit more of a modest framework, and the day after the Game Awards, or the same day, they released an expansion which added some new monsters and weapons to the game.
Yeah. This comes back to what I was saying before about how Starfield launched with being very feature poor because it's got to compete with these veteran games that have been out for a long time. Even by the same developer, they've had a lot of work put into it. Like Pokemon Go. When Pokemon Go first came out, that first summer was magical because we were all outside hanging out with each other. It was a social experience. It was the closest we ever got to world peace.
And it started off with just the first 150 Pokemon.
It wasn't just that it was just the first 151 Pokemon. First of all, the legendary birds weren't there, so it was you were down. You didn't have Mew, you didn't have Mewtwo, and you didn't have the 3 legendary birds. So you're down 5. It wasn't just that, but it was the fact that like there was very little to do in the game. Like a lot of the Pokestops didn't exist, so it was very sparse. The way that you were tracking Pokemon was weird. You had to do the footsteps, which I kind of miss. The footsteps mechanics, but just being able to go to a particular Pokestop now and be at least within a range of whatever it is you're tracking is a lot better. I do have some criticisms, but the point is that it's had years of development to get to where it is now based on user feedback and experience. And Monster Hunter Now, even if it uses the same framework and just put a different coat of paint on it, they're still kind of starting from scratch in terms of like the community.
One thing that I appreciate about Monster Hunter Now is that it's a bit more that there's a bit more of a limit to how much you can play it, which is kind of good in my opinion, because in Pokemon Go you can just stand by a place with 3 Pokestops and you can spin them all, and you only have to wait 5 minutes for them to be spinnable again. In Monster Hunter Now, you're looking at about 3 hours before stops become available again. And the stops are basically mining nodes. There's either mining nodes, plants that you can forage, or the other one is, monster bones, corpses that you can...
because like I had the same situation. Like when I play Pokemon Go, I play downtown. There's like 8 Pokestops that I kind of do a cycle through. Because by the time I get back to that first one, it's already respawned, and I can just keep hitting it up again.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised Monster Hunter Now didn't win. Although if I had my choice, I definitely would have nominated Terra Nil because I think that game deserves a lot more attention.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit about it. I haven't, played it. I've only seen some screenshots, I think.
I do believe that Terra Nil has a free demo on Steam.
Right. So is it a pay to play mobile game?
The mobile game isn't. I don't believe it is.
Right.
I see Terra Nil.
Yeah.
There is a PC version. It's about $17 right now, 30% off. $24.99 normally.
Another thing that in Monster Hunter Now is that I haven't seen much monetization in it, except for more inventory space. And there's this weird thing where you can buy gems, which allows you to get a healing potion when you die and instantly and stuff. I haven't spent any money on the game yet. The only thing I've been tempted to do is maybe some inventory space for like $2 because I keep having to throw out materials, to make room for new ones.
Yeah.
But oddly, in their shop, that you can buy these gems, but each package is one time only. So you can buy the 200 gem package one time, and you can buy the $150 3000 gem package one time. But I think apparently if you buy all of them, you can't give the game any more money, which is kind of strange.
That is kind of strange. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people will criticize it, but I do like the way that Pokemon Go monetizes its game because you do not have to spend any money to play all the content in Pokemon Go because they have ways of earning coins in game. It's not easy, but it's just time consuming.
Yeah.
And if you're a kid and you've got lots of time, then you can spend the time to earn the coins. And if you're an adult and you don't have much time, your time is worth more. You have the money to just buy the coins if you choose to. You know, um, I haven't spent a lot of money on Pokemon Go, but I know I have spent some money. And there's just cases where it's like there was a particular raid going on, and there was something really important I wanted to. A lot of the community day passes, where it's like a dollar or $2 for a day pass for a particular event that's happening that I want to participate in. And yeah, I mean, it's not hard for me to say yes to tossing a couple of dollars to get some extra interaction out of a community day event that I actually care about. And then it just comes back to me saying, like that's how I think you should monetize a game if you want to make it free to play so that everyone can participate in it. So you have lots of player base, but that way you can have the people who have the money, the disposable income to give it to you. They can be the ones to monetarily back your game.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of the winner, which I've never heard of before, Honkai Star Rail? What is that?
Haven't heard of that one.
Haven't heard of that one.
Well, I guess that's all we have to say about that then.
That's all I gotta say about that.
Next, we have Best Debut Indie. Sorry, did you want to say something, Cash?
The one thing I want to say, Hello Kitty Island Adventure. First thing I think about when I think about that is the South Park World of Warcraft episode. Butter.
Ha.
I
Really?
wish I was playing Hello. Yeah, hell yeah, that's one of his
You
favorite
know what?
lines.
For me,
Oh,
I
yeah.
immediately think of what the heck is it? Animal Crossing.
Right.
Oh, really?
I am envisioning an Animal Crossing clone. I have no idea. I could be completely wrong, but that's just
Yeah.
that's where my head goes.
Yep, I have no
what was the
idea what
best-
it is.
All right,
The
best
worst part is, now
debut
that you
indie
mention
game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got Cocoon, Dredge, Pizza Tower, Venba, and Viewfinder.
All right. Now, of all these, I really thought Viewfinder was going to win. I hoped that Dredge was going to win, but my guilty pleasure was I really wanted Pizza Tower to win just for the memes.
Yeah. That's a very odd looking game. I haven't played it myself. I haven't played any of these games. Yeah.
Oh, you should definitely play Dredge. Viewfinder
looking
too.
at it
Like
right now.
Viewfinder is like a portal. Like remember when Portal came out and everyone just had their minds blown by like, oh my god, this
Yeah.
game is so mind melting with this new gameplay mechanic. Viewfinder is like that. Viewfinder is like the Portal of the year.
Right. Yeah, I don't know
So-
anything about it.
Yeah, no, definitely make Viewfinder, put it on your radar, and if you got if you got a less of a budget, Dredge or Dave the Diver, because they've got the Dredge crossover DLC.
Yeah, I've been looking at Dave the Diver. That does look interesting. So
It's-
anyway, the winner was Cocoon. And I have I don't know anything about that game.
I'm looking at Viewfinder right now. First thing I see is the first video was this game blew my mind, but I'm looking at the trailer now, and that was a very interesting mechanic. I see what you mean now by this kind of changes things. I was not expecting that at all.
It really
did you want to maybe
pushes
show
what-
it on the screen or?
All right, yeah. So within the first 10 seconds, this thing really does kind of change your perspective of what it is. I don't know if you guys can see it. All right, yeah, there it is. So this right here is what surprised the heck out of me. I did not expect this at all. Look at this.
What the?
Yeah.
Right?
What I love about
Right?
Viewfinder is it really utilizes what a video game can do, because a video game can do things that are physically impossible, you know?
Ah.
And that's what Viewfinder is all about. It's like with Portal, you were jumping through portals in the same physical space that you were in, and with a game like Superliminal, again, it really that whole like idea of like perspective and where your point of view is. And
Yeah.
Viewfinder,
Definitely looks
it's
very
that same
creative.
thing.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
creative
and
looking game.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think that's the thing that I'm going to keep on my radar because this is interesting. This is something
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting at all. Within the first 10 seconds, it surprised the hell out of me.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the sort of thing you want to dedicate your time to, and especially because you're going to be supporting an indie game. Like that's the studio. That's the kind of creative thinking in a studio that you want to financially support and
Yeah.
flourish.
Yep, exactly. And speaking of indie games, oh, sorry. Oh, that was debut indie game, and now we've got a category for best independent game. And Cocoon is on that again. Dave the Diver, Dredge, Sea of Stars, and Viewfinder. So these are two very similar lists, and
Okay,
it
so all
has a
right, so
different winner. Sea of
okay,
Stars.
well, the difference being that the best independent game is just the best indie game out there, whereas the best debut indie game is the best indie game that is the first game made by those particular studios.
Right. Okay.
That's their debut game. That's the difference. Now, so yes, the lists are very similar, but the difference is important
Yeah.
because the best independent game could be games that could be not just the first game by these studios, so they should have some experience under their belt. And in which case, Sea of Stars winning still was a complete shock to me.
Yep. That's why
Um,
I've got my eye on that for the Nintendo Switch. Might buy that soon.
I am going to have to check out Sea of Stars because it's popped up more than a few times now.
Yeah, and it
And I
looks like
haven't.
yeah,
Chrono Trigger, one of my favorite RPGs ever. It's similar gameplay, so yeah, I'm interested.
so best
Yeah,
community support.
Yep, so we got Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Destiny 2, Final Fantasy 14, and No Man's Sky. So I'm guessing this is about
It's like the
the,
Labor of Love Award.
yeah, were all these games sort of like funded by a
No, no,
GoFundMe or
no.
something?
It's like,
No.
hey, our game came out looking
Yeah.
like garbage,
Yeah.
and we stuck around to make it better, which is why Cyberpunk is on here. No
But why
Man's
why
Sky
is
is
Baldur's
on
Gate?
here.
Well, I guess Baldur's Gate 3 might be on there because they went into early access very early. You know, I guess
Yeah,
that's the
and
reason
they
they're
did
there.
they did extensive beta testing. They had a really great community manager who interacted with the
Yeah.
people who were testing the game. They listened to the feedback. They integrated a lot of suggestions before they finally did the actual release. And it's
Yeah.
the reason why the game came out as good as it did.
Yeah.
It's because they listened to the
So
players.
like a lot of
And
these are redemption stories because Final Fantasy 14 was absolutely shit when it came out and actually had to be relaunched with a subtitle, A Realm Reborn. Um, I'm not sure. Yeah, they probably should have a
yeah,
Realm Reborn there because technically Final Fantasy 14 is a different game to
yeah.
14 A Realm
and
Reborn.
and like with No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk, like those are the stuff of legends in terms
Yeah,
of how hard they had to come back from.
yeah. They had launched terribly and their redemption stories and they deserve credit for how they didn't give up.
Yeah, credit where it's due, because they could have just taken those initial launch sales and just said, "All right, screw it,
Yeah.
we launched a crap game, we got our money, and the heck with the rest of you."
And
But
what's
no,
even
they
more
actually like,
surprising is they didn't put in a bunch of microtransaction crap either. So,
all right. I know the bar is set really low, but yes,
yeah.
credit where it's due. They did all of them. They were all great nominees.
Yeah. So
Uh,
Baldur's Gate 3 won, probably because it
Baldur's
was
Gate
it was
3
being
won pretty much
supported.
every category.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it
that it was in.
it started off very early, with a huge amount of community support, I guess.
Yes, the difference
Right
the
from
difference
the
with Baldur's
early
Gate 3
beta.
is that the difference is that their community support was proactive rather than retroactive, and I think that's why they won.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Now we
remember
got
Um,
best on this one. I had a bit of a reaction to best ongoing game: Apex Legends, Cyberpunk 2077, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, and Genshin Impact. Yeah, and these are all games as a service, except for Cyberpunk 2077. That's not a game as a service, so
which
I'm not sure why
yeah,
it's in this category.
yeah, let alone being the winner of it. And any
Yeah,
one of these other ones I would have expected to win at
like
all. And
Fortnite, I would have expected to win. Maybe
just yeah,
14.
just from sheer popularity alone.
Yeah,
But yeah, the Cyberpunk winning this one was just a straight up fluke. I have no idea where that came from.
yeah,
Straight
because
out of
it's a
left
full
field.
price game with a full price DLC. No microtransactions, so it's not like it's got an ongoing revenue like these other games do. So yeah, I don't know why it belongs there. It's weird. Um,
I must say, out of everything I do, I do feel like either Apex or Fortnite could have taken this category. Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't quite, to me, it doesn't quite seem like it. I
it-
agree with you guys. I don't think it quite fits in this category.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely not.
I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, even Genshin Impact.
Uh,
But,
that's a
but
mobile
oh,
game.
speaking of Impact,
Yeah.
games for Impact.
Right. Okay.
Space chimps. I don't see space chimps on here. That had a
Okay.
big impact.
So we got a Space for the Unbound, Chance of Semnar, Goodbye Volcano High, Tishire, or however you pronounce that, Terra Nil, and Venbar.
And you know what? I'm not sure what the theme of this category is. Games for Impact. But
I think
literally the
it's
only game I recognize on here is Terra Nil.
yeah. I think it's meant to be games that caused world peace or you know all our problems to be solved.
Oh, yeah, games for a cause. I get it.
Yeah,
The
something like
games that
that.
make you save the world, or the games that make you feel like you saved the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't played any of them.
All right. Well,
And
we can skip that then.
Right.
yeah.
Innovation and accessibility.
Yeah, so we got Diablo 4, Forza
Blind-
Motorsport, Hi-Fi Rush, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 6. I don't know, what is this? Like having the color blindness options?
I was gonna say, like, I know Hi-Fi Rush has a very good colorblind mode. Beyond that, I think it's more about like having different controls. Like Forza Motorsports has a highly customizable peripheral settings.
Yeah.
So like you can make it so you could play that game with a bunch of blow tubes. If you're like a quadriplegic and you can just use your mouth to play that game, you could still do it. Like there was a whole bit on that, which is probably why that won.
Okay.
But like Mortal Kombat 1, Street Fighter 6, those both have the arcade controller adaptability.
Yeah.
Beyond that, yeah, that's really it.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, that is a little impressive. The fact that Forza was able to make something that you can basically control with blow tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always
Really
found
make
it interesting.
That's impressive.
Like interesting that if you're a rich cunt enough, you can get that whole set of like driving controllers of like a wheel and pedals and
Yep.
yeah, that seems like it would
Actually,
be
just sold one of those not too
interesting
long
to
ago.
experience.
You wanna talk about the ultimate rich cunt thing? There was a guy who took his actual Lamborghini and he integrated into his actual Lamborghini controls in his vehicle, the steering wheel and the pedals, and he connected those to his video game, and he put his like 90-inch flat screen in front of his car in his garage
Nice.
so he could play racing games while sitting in his actual Lamborghini.
That is pretty cool.
That's how deep that
And
iceberg goes.
Yeah.
that is pretty awesome.
So as we get into the later categories, we're mostly dealing with like people rather than games. So we've got like the best performance, which of course was Neil Newborn in Baldur's Gate 3. Best audio design was just by a particular studio. I mean, obviously, Hi-Fi Rush won that one because it's a rhythm-based game.
Just quickly, actually,
Yeah.
I'll save it for later. Yeah,
Yeah.
we should go forward a bit. Best score and music.
And like Hi-Fi Rush, obviously, as a rhythm-based game, it had just an amazing soundtrack. Which again, I can promote Hi-Fi Rush all night. Great game, definitely play it. Best score and music, of course, it was in a Nintendo game. Of course, it was a Final Fantasy game. They've always had a great soundtrack, despite all my other criticisms of themselves.
Yeah.
Best art direction. I mean, this is where we start getting into like the artsy fartsy part of it, where it's like, oh, what is the message behind the artist's meaning in this cinematography? And yes, Alan Wake was kind of up its own ass a bit, but it definitely was doing that.
I know almost nothing about Alan Wake. It just looks like a generic action game to me, but maybe.
Oh no, it's not even an action game. That's the thing. When you start getting to like these ones that are like, it's a difference between going to a movie that's trying to get the most ticket sales for the year, for like a big blockbuster for the summer, versus like those November, December releases where it's Oscar bait. They're very different movies. You go to see Jaws because you want to just have a nice simple movie. You can get a bag of popcorn and just enjoy the movie. Whereas you go to see Schindler's List because it's Oscar bait and it's deep and there's a message and it's artsy and like, oh, they're using spot color. It's different. And so like with Alan Wake is very much the Oscar bait of video games.
Yeah, I noticed that it's there on Best Narrative, which is interesting because Baldur's Gate 3 is there, which I think had an amazing narrative, but maybe not as good as Alan Wake 2. I would never know.
Best Narrative was the big upset. Best Narrative was a big upset because everyone thought that Baldur's Gate was definitely going to win that one. And the fact that Alan Wake took it was the one thing I think that kept Baldur's Gate from sweeping the win of every category it was nominated in.
Yeah, so like I don't know anything about Alan Wake 2. I just know that Baldur's Gate 3 has got so much story in it that I've probably only seen 25% of the dialogue in one whole playthrough. Because there's so many different
I don't
narratives.
care how many hours you think you've got in that game, but 25% is definitely highballing it for yourself. You've probably seen closer to like 10%.
Oh, you think so?
I think so.
Because there's all the dialogue options that I didn't pick.
There's
reactions to that, and
there are
so many
voices of dialogue.
Yeah,
every time you make a choice, especially in the early game, there are entire trees of dialogue that you cut off by making a particular choice in the early game.
But anyway, we can get back to that because we're almost there to when we actually talk about the game of the year. Best adaptation. What does that mean? So we got
that's an excellent question.
Castlevania Nocturne, Gran Turismo, The Last of Us, the Super Mario. These are
movies.
TV shows and movies. I saw the Mario Bros movie in the cinema. First time I've seen a movie in the cinema since the My Little Pony movie. That's how long ago I've been to the cinema since I went and saw Super Mario Bros movie. And I watched Twisted Metal on Netflix, I think it was. Oh no, it was on Stan. And I really enjoyed it. It was awesome. It really it really brought back a lot of nostalgia from way back when I was playing Twisted Metal on the original PlayStation with my family members. Brilliant show. I really enjoy Twisted Metal. There's a lot more story to it. There's a lot of story to it, and it's only in the last 2 episodes that it actually involves an actual match of Twisted Metal where all the cars are driving around attacking each other. So you get a lot more characterization early in the show. Super Mario Bros. Movie was fun. It didn't take any risks really, other than have Peach be independent and a strong woman. Which some people might have
groundbreaking in the current year.
So some people might have issue with that lately.
No, I didn't have an issue with that. What I had an issue with is the fact that they went with Chris Pratt as the voice of Mario. And I get it. He's like Mr. Hollywood right now. He's like the
Yeah.
name that everyone wants to use. But honestly, the guy who does the voice of Mario loves doing the voice of Mario. If you've met him on the street and you ask, "Hey, do a Mario impression," he loves doing it. So he's like the kind of like the voice actor who does the voice of SpongeBob. He loves doing the voice of SpongeBob. He will do it for you for free. And they could have gotten this guy to do the actual voice of Mario from the Mario 64 games, like it's a big, and he would have done it for peanuts. And they paid top dollar for the name for Chris Pratt.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
do
That's
the
probably
voice
why
of
they
Mario,
did it.
and it just that's what it is. And then they end up alienating half of their fan base.
Well, I did like that it didn't turn into, an Italian stereotype, like the Chris Pratt
Which
didn't have
one?
to pretend to be an Italian, except for at the very start when they had that parody ad.
Yeah, and that I think that was just such a cop out. Like they look at if you're gonna have a bit, commit to the bit. You don't
But
have to commit. You don't have to commit to the bad stereotypes. Like Mario doesn't have to slap his wife around because that's what the Italianos do. No, you don't. You don't reinforce the negative ones. You can reinforce the fun ones, and like it's only going to be mildly offensive. But that's how comedy works. If something to be funny, someone has to take the fall.
Mhm.
That's the butt of the, that's what it means to be the butt of the joke.
yeah,
And I'll tell you what, like, well,
So-
go ahead.
yeah, I'm interested to see that Gran Turismo's here. I didn't know there was a show about that. But it sounds like it could be interesting to watch.
Yeah, the movies are very fast and furious.
It's not lit.
It's
It's a movie about cars going fast.
So,
Ooh,
yeah,
let
we've
me
already
get
had
saw off
those.
the floor.
yeah,
So it's
those
just
guys
another
driving
Fast and
rather
Furious, probably.
furiously. For me, I'm actually kind of interested in seeing that Twisted Metal adaptation through Peacock because I remember, like you'd mentioned, I remember being younger and playing Twisted Metal on the original PlayStation, and then as I
Yeah.
got older, I played it on the PSP for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's more adaptations now, but that's still the one things that always stuck with me. Those good old days playing PlayStation 1.
Yeah, like
Hitting,
Twisted Metal 8 was just such a great party game.
Yeah. The other thing about when I watched Twisted Metal was that it happened to be during a rare time when my mum was visiting, and we watched it together in my place. And one of the things that is interesting about that is that it was my uncle that I was playing a lot of video games with back in the day, and Twisted Metal was one that we played a lot. But he unfortunately died when I was a teenager. So yeah, there was a lot of nostalgia of watching Twisted Metal with my mum. My uncle was her brother, and obviously she was devastated when he died as well. And yeah, it had a lot of emotional sort of connection for me because of that as well.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, it being sort of a family memory.
yeah, I could see
Now,
that.
for best game direction, it doesn't really spawn a whole lot of discussion. It was just
It's
I'm
just
not
more of
even
the
sure
same
like how they
games.
quantify that. Well, yeah. Well, again, it was another upset where Alan Wake 2 beat out Baldur's Gate 3. I just really wish that there would be any game on this particular list that wasn't a sequel, because they're all sequels. I mean, Super Mario Brothers Wonder is just part of a series, and same with Legends of Zelda. But like Baldur's Gate 3 and Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I love Baldur's Gate 3, it is a sequel. It's part of a series.
Yeah, it's more like like it's set in the D&D world, but its gameplay is like Divinity. So
Yeah. And again, this is why I really loved like best indie debut, because those were very clearly the first games of if they're ever going to have a sequel, like they are the first ones, especially the first ones by a new studio, and that's where you see the real innovation. Like that's where I see things like Viewfinder, where you get these really innovative gameplay mechanics. That's where the evolution of the industry happens.
yeah. And yeah, I heard a lot of people say that this Super Mario Brothers Wonder, like the 2D Mario games were getting really stale. Ever since New Super Mario Bros. And it launched off from that of, whatever. And apparently a lot of people are saying that Mario Bros. Wonder is one that's finally brought a lot of fresh ideas into the 2D Mario Bros. Genre. That's just what I've heard. I haven't played it myself. I probably never will. I'm waiting for the next, Mario Galaxy style game, or Mario 64. That's
Yeah, well, I mean,
more my sort of
everyone
game.
looks back at like Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System as being like the peak of like 2D Mario for that particular generation until you went to like Nintendo 64, and then now you're in three dimensions, and then you get to like the Wii and the Switch, and I would say that three-dimensional Mario era peaked with Mario Galaxy, just because that was when you had the most like level-based platforming puzzles without too much garbage cluttering it up, the way that the later games kind of did with like Odyssey and whatnot, with it just being about gimmicks instead. And I think that when you had like Super Mario Brothers Wii, where it was like a 2.5D game, and you're again like you're kind of in the 2D platformer with the 3D graphics. The only thing that the Super Mario Brothers Wii introduced was the ability to play multiplayer 2D platforming, which I love to call asshole Mario, because usually it was the other players who were getting you killed.
I mean, you're not exactly wrong there. I vividly have memories of, it'd be like four of us were trying to run across, and you just jump on somebody else's head and launch them right into like a pit in the ground, basically.
Right in the lava every
Yep,
time.
pretty much. And you're like, bro, no. But that's, I mean, that kind of adds to the fun in it, if I'm being completely honest. It was chaos. It really
No,
was.
no, that was absolutely it, and that's why I just embrace the chaos of multiplayer most times now. Like, and like again, like with playing a game like the finals, or a game like Baldur's Gate 3, where you just kind of have to abandon like any semblance of this plan going to course. You just have to embrace the chaos. Like, everything's going to go wrong, and we're just going to see how we deal with it, or we're all going to die. That's really it. Like, those are your
Yeah,
options.
it
Like,
is. It
it's going to
is.
be chaotic. You just got to deal with it or die and try again.
Actually, it's funny because I was thinking about it for a second. In the Hunt Showdown, there's actually a character that launches like it's basically bees just come after you. But holy crap!
I'm
Every
just gonna
time
let
you
you
launch,
guys talk for a bit, and I'm gonna fill up my
no,
drink,
All right.
you're good, you're
and
good.
then we'll get to best game of the year.
Like
Back soon.
as soon as that prick gets scared or scared and spooked, it's like the witch in Left 4 Dead 2. It just everyone just panics for a second. It's
Yeah.
chaos. Turns into
And then,
chaos.
like, it's just whoever she's going after, now they're going to die. You got to accept that they're going to die. And the rest of you all have this one chance to just unlaunch as much ammo as you can, and then go find that person in the closet. Like, all right, everything just went tits up. Now you got to deal with it.
Yeah, pretty much. And that part of it really does add to the how should I say it? I want to say immersion, but also it's just the funness of it.
Well, yeah,
The
what it does is
chaos.
because like you could have a strategy from moment to moment of like, hey, you're watching out for the specials, you're dealing with the horde, you're on crowd control or whatever, and you're the one looking around for pickups, and then a witch comes along, all of a sudden a wrench gets thrown into all that, everyone scatters, it's chaos, and then someone dies, and now you got to go find someone in a closet or a locker or whatever, and it mixes it up, and that was one of the many, many things that made Left 4 Dead so genius, is the way that they would mix up your strategy. As soon as you have a strategy that works, it throws a wrench in it. It always finds a way.
I mean, it's
Your
similar
gameplay
with
is never going to.
D&D.
You can play the same level 100 times, and it's going to be different every time because of that.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's just like when they would toss in a one of the tanks that running in there out of nowhere. It's kind of similar to that. It's just you don't know exactly how the game is going to screw you over, but you just know at some point something's going to come after you, and something's going to
Yeah,
come after you that there's a complete and total wrench in the plan.
you don't know how it's going to do it, but you know it's going to do it. So you just need to have that toolkit, that mental toolkit to improvise, and those are the players that'll thrive.
Actually, it's funny because I was, just going back to Hunt for a little bit. There was this one, how you run around finding clues. Well, they have a similar boss or a similar enemy to like a tank although this one is blind, so it can't really see. It goes off these little leeches that it poops out. But my buddy just jumps down right next to one, trying to be all Batman and trying to be all, silent. And he turns around, there's one, like, basically grabbing him up the backside because he didn't realize, like, oh, crap, there was two of these fuckers. And that just completely just threw off the entire rest of that round because it was like, oh, man, now I have to deal with this. Essentially, it took up, like, 30 minutes of time trying to get him back up. And by the time he even did, like, he had no health. There was there was maybe one boss left. And I had taken damage myself, so in reality, it was like we're basically now fighting as cripples. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, that was kind of the situation we found ourselves in, and somehow we still managed to make some cash out of it. But
Yeah, I mean,
Let's go
assuming
back.
we all don't die to Skynet, destroying the world, I am actually genuinely looking forward to seeing what AI can do in the video game arena for things like that. Where, like for example, the AI, the way that works in like Alien Isolation, where it learns how you deal with threats in certain ways, and then it works to undermine that. So if you always hide in a locker, there's going to be less lockers or whatever, and it makes it so that way you can't just keep relying on your old reliable strategy of like, oh, I'll just do this. Nope, now it's going to screw you over this way. So it reinforces that sense of like, oh gosh, no matter what I do, the alien's so much smarter, and it keeps you in that state of panicked horror the way that a horror game really needs to.
Yep.
right, especially as it learns.
Interesting to see what it can do with making challenging opponents. Like normally I think like in Perfect Dark, you'd set the difficulty to the enemies being perfect. That's the highest difficulty, and I guess it would just mean they would cheat. They would have perfect aim and stuff like that. That's how they make the game more difficult. But it'll be interesting to see what AI could add to actually making your enemies more intelligent rather than just having more hit points or perfect aim. And
Well, that's just it. It's like you can, if you want to increase your difficulty, you can make your enemies deal more damage, or you can give them more health, and you can modify those things in simple numeric ways. But like the way that I'm describing in terms of the interest I have of seeing the evolution of AI in
enemies that
video
actually
games.
learn what your habits are.
Exactly. And the first time I
You got
encountered
to
that
it.
was the first time I played through the first Half-Life game, and I encountered the enemy grunts, and the way that they would work together as a team, and they would try to flush you out with grenades out of your hiding spots. I'm like, how are they doing this? Because I was so used to playing games like Doom, where the enemies would just pathfind in a straight line to come at you as quickly and directly as possible, and they would just walk into your bullets. But like then I was playing in Half-Life. This is back in 1998, and you had enemies that were taking cover, they were throwing grenades, they were doing burst fire and then going back into cover again, and they were flushing you out. And I was so impressed by that back then, and we've only come further now where like you have very intelligent computer enemies, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to seeing how that develops in the next 10 or 15 years.
No, and
And that's a bit more of an ethical use of AI as well, compared to,
Well, as I said,
art.
as long as we don't all die from Skynet, then I'd
Yeah.
be interested to see how it goes.
that's what's going to happen. It's going to learn how we play Call of Duty, and that's how it's going to learn to counteract human intelligence.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if it comes to that, I'd say I had a good run.
Okay.
Honestly, though,
So
but that's a different discussion.
okay. Well, we're nearly getting past 2 hours now, so we should get to the game of the year. The nominees were Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and Tears of the Kingdom.
All sequels.
Yep, good point. Yeah.
Say that just and I'm sure
And
you're
even
not
Baldur's
listening.
Gate, I kind of consider that a sequel to Divinity, spiritual sequel to Divinity 2.
Yeah,
More,
no,
more
I
than
get
more
where
than
that-
it being a sequel to Baldur's Gate 2.
I get where that's coming from. And here's the thing: when they finally came to Game of the Year and they made the announcement, Baldur's Gate was on the list. First of all, Baldur's Gate was on the list. Starfield wasn't even on the list, but you could still see that hope in Todd Howard's eye that they were still just going to announce Starfield was the winner anyway.
Right.
And
Oh,
just when they announced Baldur's Gate 3 as the Game of the Year award, and he realized that Starfield had won literally 0 awards, you could just watch his soul rip in half.
oh, really? Could you? Oh man, that'd be
Oh yeah, no, there was a camera on him when they were making the
nice.
announcement, and
Nice.
when like every time Starfield came up for nomination and it didn't win, he's just like, all right, he's just inhaling that copium until
Yeah.
finally, like, there's the final category, and he realized that Starfield had not won a single category, and you could see the instant that his heart rips in half.
Yeah,
Oh,
I can relate to that because you get a lot more attached to your own creation. You know, you kind of you're more biased to think that your own creation is the best thing ever made. You know.
yeah, and like I said, I hoped and I prayed sincerely that Starfield was going to be good. And it just comes back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast, is that we're all laughing at an industry that never learns anything.
Mm,
You had No Man's Sky with a bad launch, you had Cyberpunk, and you had these massive multi-billion dollar companies who were making these incredible mistakes. And and you would think that the rest of the industry would take a step back and say, all right, what went wrong? How can we learn from this? And
yeah.
then Starfield happens, and it just comes out, and it just becomes the joke of the year because they rushed it. It wasn't ready at launch time, and they just said, "Go, go, go! We have to make this date."
Yeah.
And
It was another
because,
Cyberpunk
and
2077
here's the thing. Well,
situation.
at least Cyberpunk, and I know this is it's a discredit to Cyberpunk because Cyberpunk getting delayed became its own joke. But
Right.
like, honestly, if you have to delay it, because if it's not ready at launch, then you're gonna end up with Starfield. You're
Mm,
gonna end up with No Man's Sky, where it's got all this space, literal space, but like there's no content filling it. You're gonna end up with Sea of Thieves at launch, where it was a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of depth. There was so little to do in the original Sea of Thieves when it first came out,
yeah. And
and
there's 1,000 planets and only something to do on 10 of them.
yeah, and like I'm sure that going forward in the years to come, in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, Starfield is going to become an amazing game. I'm sure that the modding community is going to pick up the slack and they'll be like, "Hey, here's the mod that fixes this really obvious glaring bug that they
Mm.
couldn't fix on launch day, but here it is." And there's going to be hot fixes and patches and all sorts of things. And I'm sure
And
Starfield
actually
is going to have.
having a reason to fly your ship in space. Apparently that doesn't happen in Starfield.
Yeah, because here's the thing. This is the big difference with an open world game. Like Starfield is an open world game, and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are open world games. But Starfield has all these fast travel points that you can fast travel between because that's what they want you to do. They want you to fast travel because traveling isn't fun. Whereas with Legends of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and even Breath of the Wild, yeah, you could fast travel, but part of the experience was just the traveling, seeing
Yeah.
the landscape, and just
Uh,
enjoying the journey.
yeah, exactly. One thing about that, on Legend of Zelda, both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I rarely ever used my horse because I wanted to take in the surroundings and I wanted to be equipped, like not stuck on my horse if something comes up, and I want to be able to go and forage materials and stuff. Whereas being on your horse makes that harder, so I rarely even use the faster traveling of the horse as well in
Yeah,
Zelda.
but the point is, on a horse or not, the travel itself is engaging, and that is what games
Mm.
like Starfield lack, and that's why they rely so heavily on the fast travel system. And the whole point of space exploration games should be the exploration. And yeah, I get that the realism is supposed to make it feel sparse. You can still do that while still making it interesting. If you look at the modern take on No Man's Sky, if you just fly around the star systems, I mean, like, you still have asteroids and bandits that you can interact with in your moment-to-moment space travel, rather than just, hyper jumping from one system to the next, trying to get to the center of the galaxy, like the original game used to be. Like, that was the whole goal. You have to make, if you're going to have an open world game, if you're going to decide from the beginning to have an open world game with a lot of traveling and exploration, you need to make that part of the game interesting.
Mm.
And actually, that's something that I was thinking right now. Is like if you want to make it interesting, what's one thing that they can do? And that's the first thing I thought. Like, you know what? Add bandits to it. Like, there's more that you can do, especially with the vastness of space. Like, for God's sakes, you can make beautiful backgrounds. You can make beautiful, how should I say, quick time events even. And utilizing stuff like asteroids and bandits, you can make it like, hey, there's an actual reason behind why you would want to travel in space in Starfield.
Yeah, and one of the great things too, and I hate to bring psychology elements into this, but like if you add in like the element of chance and lottery, where like, hey, you can mine these asteroids, and yeah, 99 asteroids is going to have just regular plain old iron in it, but you might find iridium, which is this really rare thing that you can only find by mining these asteroids in these travels, and it gives you a reason, it gives you a motivation to grind on this like otherwise mundane task, but it's something you can only do by in your courses of travel. And like these asteroids just aren't going to be everywhere. You're going to find them. So then when you find these asteroids, it becomes exciting because it's like a scratch ticket every time. And no, it was just more iron, but iron's very useful anyway, so I'm happy to have it. But gosh, maybe next time it'll be iridium. And when you add that element of chance and you make it a lottery, it engages people to want to not fast travel. You know.
Yeah, I heard a lot
No,
about
and
the
the
fast
is
traveling stuff
an
on.
actual reason to travel, and that's the important
Yeah.
part. You need a reason to. You can't just be, for example, if you have no, if there's nothing to do but travel, if there's nothing to do but say, just press W and keep moving forward, that's basically just a running simulator, but in space.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, apparently Starfield didn't really do very it didn't do
Yeah,
very well with its quests either, or having
I think Starfield is
NPC
going to
being
become the next Cinderella story, kind of like with
once they work on it a bit.
Cyberpunk. With Cyberpunk, it's going to be the next Cinderella story where it comes back from a terrible launch and ends up becoming a great game, and we just have to kind of let time tell on that. But
Yeah.
as far as like the rest of the game awards ceremony, like watching Kojima come out with Jordan Peele was strange.
Yeah.
I mean, I know as soon as he shows up, it becomes an event because he's just such a big celebrity in the gaming community, and he's got his very dedicated fan base.
And they shined the light right at his crotch. That was kind of funny. Like they were showing off his dick. It's like big dick
Really?
Kojima. Oh, you didn't see that?
No, I
like
wasn't
when he
paying
walked,
attention to that.
when he walked in, they had this effect where there was light shining behind him, and it went right between the bottom of, right between his thighs, and it looked like it was glowing his dick.
Oh no, I think that's just how the backlighting things
Yeah.
work. I don't know, Cash. Is that what you saw?
I didn't actually notice anything like that, but I didn't watch it, so
Okay.
I couldn't
It's
tell
just it's
either
weird
way.
because like I know like the OD trailer was classic Kojima where it's vague, you don't know what the game's even about. It just reminds me of like games like Death Stranding where it's just like, ooh, it's got Sean Bean in it, so it must be good, and I'm sure he's probably gonna die because that's what he's known for.
Yeah. I mean, it just gives me the impression that it's going to be one of those interactive movie games. That's
Yeah,
kind of what it
and
looks like.
I think yeah, that's why I kind of get the impression that Kojima kind of ended up in the game industry, but he really wanted to be a movie director and just didn't have the chops for it or something. And this is the result.
Maybe.
Matthew McConaughey showing up was just like, are we in a fucking? Is this an episode of Punked right now? Is I keep waiting for Ashton Kutcher to jump out and be like, Punked.
You know what it is? We just live in the best timeline. That's really what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we get to be the generation that remembers the good times before the missiles fly, and Skynet takes over.
Either that or we all become irradiated monkeys.
Yeah,
I found that.
either that. Ooga
found that
booga.
Claude Howard.
But
Yeah. Well, I mean, man, right? The best way to solve a problem is to give it an unga dunga and a stuck with a stick or two.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But I
but
found
it just comes back to what we said at the very beginning of this podcast, that the 2023 Game Awards was a parody of itself, and in a lot of ways it was, and I'm glad to see that they don't take themselves too seriously like the Oscars. But on the other hand, it was kind of a little ham-handed at times, and hopefully, I'm looking forward to see what they do next year for sure.
Yeah. And I'm really happy to see, Baldur's Gate 3 be the winner and get the recognition it deserved for such a great effort that they put into that game.
Yes, and
yeah.
not just for it to be a good game, but I want it to be an example. I want all the other game developers to look at it and say, "This is how you do it right. Here is
Yeah.
the playbook. Just do it like this," you know.
Yeah,
And
but the problem is,
there's
a lot of AAA developers are really scared now because they're like, "Holy crap, that's the standard we have to reach."
yes, it is, and the
Yes, it
fans
is.
are going to hold you to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I,
And not just
I
that,
found that
but
Todd Howard, by the way.
yeah, not just that, but the voice acting in Baldur's Gate 3 was absolutely phenomenal. A voice actor from Baldur's Gate 3 won the award for best acting in a game.
Yes,
And it wasn't just
best
him though.
performance.
Every single character in that game had phenomenal voice acting, and even the random NPCs that have like 2 lines of dialogue, even they were great voice actors. It was absolutely amazing. It's normally when I play a game like Zelda, for example, I'll listen to a podcast while I'm playing. Um, I did not turn podcasts on at all during Baldur's Gate 3. I let the game absorb me fully, and even in battle, you know, and yeah, it
Yeah,
was
and
one of
that
those
really is,
games.
it's the mark of a good game, and it really should be the gold standard to which that we need to hold the rest of the industry up to. If they're going to be a billion-dollar industry with a B, then yes, this is the level of quality we should be demanding from our developers.
And it's not the only place that we see that kind of it's almost like a gate checking for quality, because you can see it in movies. Movies, when they don't have a good, let's say, when there's something missing from a movie, it's kind of spreads like wildfire. Like when a movie doesn't have good ratings, there's a reason for it. Often, oftentimes it's because a flaw within the movie itself. It's not usually, I mean, there's every once in a while where it's something like political or whatever it may be, but for the most part, there typically is a reason why a movie would get low ratings. And you can see that with like tomato scores, or not tomato scores, the audience score. And
Yeah,
you can typically tell, like, hey, you know what? I can see why it got I can see why it got the rating it did. Very
yeah.
seldom is it like it should
The
mismatch.
the bottom line is this is the information age, and I'm not talking about like Google mining your information and selling it on the internet. Like people voluntarily provide their critical scores everywhere. Rotten Tomatoes is a great example, but if you just look at like the sales scores on things on a platform like Steam, all of that is publicly available information. You can see what sells, and you can understand why they sell well. And so there's really no excuse for you to purposefully, with an unlimited budget, the way the AAA game industry does, to put out a bomb. So again, I think this is a really great precedent for Baldur's Gate 3 to set, for the industry to say this is what the community demands. And yeah, this is a high bar to meet, and this is what you should be aiming for. You can't just get away with putting out crap anymore.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I think that's a good note to leave off on.
I have to agree with that one. Either that, or we can also here. Let me just pull up this clip of Todd Howard real quick.
Yep.
Game award goes to Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate,
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate,
Yeah.
and you see his soul dying.
Nice. I
And
almost thought
here's
that
the-
was Bill Clinton kid.
And here's the thing, like I watched the trailer that he put out, like when they did their big announcement, and it was this big like hour-long making of the Starfield, and I was so excited to watch it, and I just his excitement for it was so intoxicating. I really wanted it to be good, and then when it came out, that there had to have been people within that in the industry that said, or within his company that said it's not ready to launch. We need to delay it, and to
Yeah.
whoever was in charge of making those decisions, that was unacceptable, and they said, "Let's go," you know.
Well, I mean, you can
And
actually see that that's almost the story of Cyberpunk 2077, a game how many years in the making, being pushed back so many times, so many times, so many times, and eventually they said, no, you know what? It's time to just put this game out, and it
yeah,
wasn't ready.
and to be fair, Cyberpunk was a different story. I'm not excusing them, but it was a different story where they did delay. They delayed so many times, and it still came out with a lot of problems. And I think that Starfield definitely didn't want to go that route where they just kept delaying, because eventually you have to release. And I think that honestly, the best thing that Starfield could have done was to release it and not necessarily slap early access on it, but maybe kind of release it with controlled expectations.
Yeah. What I'm getting sick of is that we're basically keep paying to play alphas lately.
Well, here's the thing. I don't mind doing that if there's transparency. Like if
Yeah.
you say
Yeah.
early access on it, then I'm going to go into it with certain expectations. Like, okay, yes, I'm going to get this at a reduced cost, and I'm going to give feedback to try to make this game better, with the understanding that there's going to be bugs. And
Yeah.
if they had come out with Starfield saying it's early access, even if it's AAA label, I'm okay with that. I could buy the game and say, okay, I'm going to go into this with the understanding, the transparent, uh, informed decision to purchase the game, knowing that it's going to have problems, knowing that it's going to have bugs, knowing that like, I'm going to need to give feedback and cope with
Yeah.
this in the meantime, with the understanding that it's going to be fixed down the line. But if you're going to release a game and call it a ready to go AAA game on launch day, and it has all these problems with the promise of it being this amazing experience, and it's not, that's just poor
Yeah.
selling it.
Well, I
that's
mean,
false. It's false advertising at
business
worst.
a lot of games are fine with doing that, but there's certain places that your game can't go until it leaves early access, and that's probably the reason why the management or the corporate part of the game development process gets in the way, because they want to be able to send the game out to game stores and onto the Nintendo Switch if it's going there, because obviously the Nintendo Switch doesn't have early access alpha games
Yeah,
on
well,
it.
and ultimately, we all need to understand that the game's business is a business, and at the end of the day, the business's objective is to make a product to make money.
Yeah.
And I think that Starfield launching as it was when it did was the correct thing to do, because now you put it in the hands of the community, and now the modders can come in and fix it, and then you could integrate those mods as hot patches, so that way the whole gaming community gets to benefit from those changes without
Yeah.
having to download the mods.
I sure hope they
The-
don't make us pay for mods.
No, I'm just saying that it's totally okay for the game to do that. Like for the game to come out, be broken. Like when Skyrim came out, it was broken. We added mods, it got better because they took the changes that the modding community made and they integrated it into the core game. And Starfield can and should and probably will do the exact same thing. I just wish that they had been transparent about that at launch when it came out and said, "Hey, listen, we know it's got a few bugs in it, but we've had a really great modding community with Skyrim, and we know that you guys can carry this ball." And yeah, I know they're not going to get a standing ovation saying that the modding community is going to pick up all the slack that they missed out on. But if they say, like, look, it's either this or we're going to delay this game another year, I think people would be pretty okay with that. The majority of people would be okay with that, because as long as you're transparent with it, and that's the difference, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that no game is going to be perfect at launch. With games as big and as complex as they are now, we're not talking about like Super Mario Bros. Coming out in a cartridge where it's set in stone. If there's a bug in that game, it's there forever.
Oh yeah, they're fucked then.
These games are living vessels where you can change them, you can mod them, you can have patches, you can hotfix them, you can have DLC for them, and you can treat it that way and have a game come out that's got problems with it, with the promise that you're going to fix it, and the hopes that like your modding community is going to help you with that.
Yeah,
And you
they,
get
they
people
are
who very
leaning.
happy.
Yeah, they are leaning on that too much now, though. Like
But
they
but they
use it as an
need.
excuse now.
But at
Oh,
the
we'll
end of
fix
the
it
day, they
later.
need to be. I'm just saying they need to be honest about that. When the
Yeah,
game comes out, they need to be honest. Say, hey, listen, it's not perfect, but it's either if you wait for it to be perfect, you're gonna wait forever. Here's what we got, and as long as you are honest about that, people will respect that. And so it's a
mm,
lot better than Starfield trying to promise that's going to be the god of games and have it be this buggy mess, because it's just embarrassing,
Yeah, I mean,
And
not only that, you can also look at it like, that's technically speaking also a way to, in a sense, save on costs, because if you're transparent about it from the beginning, saying like, this is an alpha game, you're 100% correct in that people are going to find ways to essentially create hot patches. They're going to find ways to make mods that fix this specific
yeah.
problem,
They're gonna
and then
find the
you're able
problems that
to.
the developers don't know about, haven't found.
Right, because I mean, not every, nobody's perfect. There are
And
some
the
things that you
fans of the
can
game will
look
do it for free. Like I don't understand like
exactly.
why more business models don't like
Well,
I hate to get immoral about it, but like I don't understand why more business models don't like just exploit that.
yeah,
But anyways,
You
the
know what? It
point
could be.
is Baldur's Gate 3
Yeah,
has set the bar high, rightfully so. We have high hopes for Starfield. I hope it becomes a good game in the future. And I'm looking forward to 2024 gaming scene.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing what comes out from this and comes out from, in the future, because this is the first Game Awards that I've actually paid any form of attention to, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. Just this one and last year's one. Last year's one I also watched with Shakes in his Discord with the community.
So I'm
And
looking forward
so
to
that-
seeing
yeah.
what goes from here.
Yeah, it's an interesting yearly event to keep track of, I guess. Even though it's a bit of a parody, can't really be taken too seriously. Although,
But I'm okay with that. Like, when I say that it's a parody of itself, I'm not saying that to make fun of it. I'm just saying that that's what it is. I'm okay with it, and I think that they're doing it correctly to the right audience. They're playing it to their audience.
yeah. Yeah, so we're 2 hours and 20 minutes in, so I think we might want to end it here unless we want to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 in detail, but maybe you guys don't have time for that.
No, not tonight. That'll be time for another podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
mean, we could do it always. We can always just start off next podcast with that.
Yep. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right, guys. Till next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, great
And
talking,
I'll
y'all.
see you guys next time. Thanks.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.
All right.
This is your queen speaking. I was brought back from the dead, temporarily to complete my final royal duty to officially endorse the Mystery Gaming Bros podcast. Now please let me rest in peace.
Game over.